Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Dana Buckler Show. My name is Dana, and this is a special episode for me. This is an episode that honestly, if you would have asked me back in 2013 if I would have gotten to, I honestly don't know the answer. But it's no surprise to you listening because you're seeing the title of the episode. This is the 9th anniversary of this podcast, a podcast that started out as How Is This Movie, and in 2018 evolved to the Dana Buckler Show. And for this episode, I wanted to ask a friend who has been so gracious to join me numerous times, someone that I met back in 2015, and someone who I have looked at as more than just a friend, somebody I consider a mentor when it comes to my education of the movie industry and movies as a whole over the past 45 years. And that is my friend, writer, director, filmmaker, Phil Joanou. Phil, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Great, Dana. Thank you so much. It is an honor to be back here on the anniversary episode. And congratulations to you. I mean, for what a run. And you've just been kicking butt for quite a while here. And it's fantastic. So thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. And when you say what a run, I always want to just remind everybody that when I started this journey back in 2013, I spent the first few years explaining to people what a podcast was versus versus the actual substance of the show that I was going towards. Now, in 2022, when I mention to someone in a casual conversation that I do a podcast, the response I typically get now is, "Oh, you too?" So I'm exactly. Glad to see that exactly. I'm glad to see that.
Like, who isn't doing one, Dana? My mom does podcasts too.
So, but this is a big one. This is 9 years. This is a big milestone for me. And you were so kind to join me on the 5th anniversary episode back in 2018. And on that episode, Phil, we went through my top 10 films of all time, and you offered some amazing commentary and some insight and a lot of stuff I didn't know about a majority of those films that I talked about. But I thought this year, for the 9th anniversary, I would flip the script a little bit. I would ask you to do a list. But 9 is an odd number, so I don't want you to do a top 10. I want you to do a 9 list. And I'm not even saying a top 9 list. It's just a 9 list, but there's got to be some criteria set forth. I was inspired to ask you to do a list from 1975 to 1984. This is one movie from each one of those years, starting in 1975. Now, why did I come up with 1975? Well, the answer is simple.
I didn't ask you that. When you sent me the suggestion. Which I was thrilled by. It's a great idea, but I was curious, why did you start at 75?
Well, you see, Phil, I started at 1975 for a very important reason. You see, my favorite movie of all time came out in 1975, and I believe.
Oh, I know what it is.
and I know one of your favorite movies of all time also came out in 1975.
That is right.
And for the new listeners,
I should have known that was why. Go on.
So for the new listeners out there, that would be Jaws, which, again, if you want to understand Phil's appreciation for the movie Jaws, I invite you to go back and listen to our 3-part series, A Filmmaker's Journey, where Phil goes through his experiences seeing that movie in the theater several times, I might add. And I'm, again, super jealous that you got to see that movie on the big screen multiple times.
Opening day.
God, that must have been such. Oh, I know we've already talked about this. We've talked about this at length, but that must have been the experience that must have been. So I thought it would be fun if Phil, not only fun, but I'm hoping that there's going to be a few movies on this list that I haven't seen, because one of my big loves over the past couple of years is rediscovering movies that came out in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s that I have missed. Now, this is a positive episode. I'm not going to get into my thoughts on the current state of, blockbuster cinema. That's not what today's episode's about.
Not only that, I mean, it's just all so self-apparent, right? I mean, it is what it is. And what we're going to discuss here today is a very different era in cinema. And every art form goes through different eras and phases. And it was just, the period we're going to talk about. It's interesting, Dana, that I think that going through this list, which was a lot of fun, by the way. So thank you for asking me to do it, because it was really fun to go through all the films released each year and remind myself, of how many of them I saw in the theaters back then. I was going to movies. I must have been going to movies twice a weekend. I mean, I don't understand how I saw all these, because I saw virtually, all the ones I'm going to mention, of course, but I was going through, like the top 100 films of each year. I'm like, I think I saw 90 out of 100 of them each year. I was like, what the hell? No wonder I ended up becoming, that's all I did. But anyway, but what's interesting is you'll see as we go through this, starting in the 80s, and it's weird how it almost began at the turn of the decade. Really in 81, in my opinion, it changed again. So it's funny, if we had done like kind of 70 to 80, and then if we had done 80 to 90, which I'm glad we did, and I like what you chose, you'd see a pretty big shift in the types of films that were popular and were being made even than, between the two decades. So we'll see here. We'll see as we go through. We'll see how things changed. Although my choices still kind of track with the mood and tone of the 70s, of course, even as we get into the 80s. But the films that were extremely successful and popular really shifted starting in the 80s. And, there's some pretty obvious theories for why that happened. But
well, I will say that at any point, when we start with 75 and work our way up, you're welcome to throw in honorable mentions, things that almost made your list, so.
I had to, because there's just no way in some of these years in particular that I could pick one. I did pick my favorite because that was the task, but in some of these, as you'll see, it's super close. So I do have honorable mentions. In fact, the whole list has more than one. So for people who maybe haven't seen some of these films, you'll get a few more than just the 9.
Okay. Well, I have not seen your list. We have not discussed anything. I'm going into this completely blind. I just gave you the criteria. So, Phil, for the 9th anniversary of the Dana Buckler Show, we're going to talk about your 9 favorite movies from each year, starting in 1975, working our way up to 1984. The floor is yours with 1975.
All right, Dana. Thank you. We will begin. In 75, I was in middle school. So you try to picture. Because what I try to do is I not only try to pick movies that were my favorites now, but were also my favorites then. So I kind of gave myself in retrospect, I really tried to also tap into what I was thinking and feeling as a film goer, as a moviegoer at the time. And all these picks would have been my favorites the year I saw them. And what's interesting is they still remain my favorites now. So I think that's kind of interesting. The impact they had on me then still sticks with me. I haven't really revised. I was surprised, by the way, I really wasn't like, once I became a filmmaker, my appreciation for this movie, I grew out of that other movie. No, I still loved the movies I loved when I was 13 years old, all the way up through, I guess we're looking at 23. So, see, yeah, exactly. All right, 1975. Well, everyone knows what I'm about to say because of Dana's preamble. So I'm going to start with some of the other great movies of 75 that were really, really tough. Dog Day Afternoon, for those of you that want to see an incredible Al Pacino performance. And I mean, Al Pacino in his prime. And if you've seen The Godfather, he could not be further away from Michael Corleone in these films, or this film, than he was in those films, I should say. And it's a filmmaker named Sidney Lumet, who was an absolutely A++ brilliant director. And he's going to come up again on my list here down the road. And you just cannot. John Cazale, who was also in The Godfathers and The Deer Hunter, is in the film as well. And it is a fantastic movie. But Not number one. There's another great film, Shampoo, starring Warren Beatty. Shampoo is just, it's God, I don't even know if anyone really talks about it or Warren or all, but it's directed by a guy named Hal Ashby, who was also an incredible filmmaker. And it's really, really good. A young Goldie Hawn, who's fantastic in it. Carrie Fisher, a really young Carrie Fisher, who's also great. It's funny. It captures the mood and tone of 75 perfectly. And it's a great movie. Now, you're not going to believe this, but before I get to number one, there's a film that almost knocked out my number one, that almost knocked out the film that made me want to become a director. The film I saw 5 times in the theaters. This other movie, I only saw once in the theater, but it had such a major impact on me. And that film is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Of course.
And, you're a kid and you're trying to figure out what it means to be an individual, what it means to stand up to the system, what it means to be, I don't know, a little bit different. And boy, Jack Nicholson, first of all, it's an incredible novel by Ken Kesey, but it, I guess Kesey as I pronounce it, I'm not sure, but Nicholson and, Milos Forman and directed it. Haskell Wexler shot it. And, I think Haskell was fired and then Bill Butler came in and finished it. But anyway, setting that aside, Cuckoo's Nest is truly an unbeatable classic. It's like in my top 10 movies of all time. So it's rough to pass up, but in all fairness, when a movie changes the course of your life, like my number one did, and when the movie changed the course of cinema, like number one did, and when this movie changed the course of the trajectory of arguably the greatest filmmaker in the history of the medium, you got to give number one to Jaws. And, I had never, ever had an experience in a theater like I did seeing Jaws for the first time. People screaming, people yelling, people jumping out of their chairs. Physically jumping up out of their seats. Like the shark was trying to bite their legs beneath the chairs. It was incredible. And of course, I had just never seen that level of filmmaking, that level of control over the medium. And obviously there were other examples of that earlier in cinema that I just hadn't seen or probably had seen on TV. And, Citizen Kane was out there, of course, but, not accessible. Like you couldn't, order up Citizen Kane and stream it when you felt like it, or go get the DVD, of which there was no such thing. Or for that matter, in 75, you couldn't go get a VHS. There was no Blockbuster. You saw it on TV or you saw it in the cinema, and that was that. And TV was all commercials. There was no such thing as cable, where you got to watch a film uninterrupted. Think about that for a minute. You either saw a film 2 hours in a go, uninterrupted, only in a theater, only. Or you got to watch what they called the TV edit, where they would take scenes out, where they would shorten it, where they would chop it because it had to fit the 2 hour or 90-minute section, plus commercials, right? So if you hadn't seen The Godfather when it came out, you were not going to see it again other than on TV with commercials cut down. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that was your exposure to long-form storytelling if you didn't make it to the theater? And so, boy, just think about the difference of the impact a film could have on our culture, on our society, on our country. Back then, compared to now, it's like, oh, Amsterdam came out. Oh, cool. Good cast. I'll catch it whenever.
Yeah. Good point.
Incredible cast. Great filmmaker. David O. Russell's made some films everyone's loved. Amsterdam comes out, does 6 million. Everyone's like, cool, whatever. I'll see it on streaming. It'll be on Netflix eventually. It'll be on HBO eventually. Whatever. Blah, blah, blah. No one Whereas you take that exact same film, you plop it down in 76, you got to go. There's no way you're going to see those people together ever again that way unless you get to the theater. So feel free to chop this little rant out if you want to, Dana. But the point is, I just want everyone to be understand the context. When you say 75, you go, oh, 75. Well, what the hell, back in 75, did they have cars back then? Was there electricity? I know it sounds like forever ago to you younger listeners, but let me tell you something. It was a big freaking deal. Jaws was a big deal. And there's nothing, and I mean nothing. Game of Thrones, I know it's a big deal. I dug it. I watched every episode. I watched House of Dragon last night, but the point is, it's still not the same.
Yeah.
It's not the same. I didn't watch House of Dragon last night with 500 people in the cinema with me. And that was the only place you could see it on a giant screen. And not even with surround sound. Surround sound didn't exist in 75.
Wow.
So, yeah, stereo. Before that, it was mono. All right. So there you go. So you got Dog Day, you got Shampoo, you got Cuckoo's Nest, and the king of the year, maybe the king of many years, certainly also in the top 10, 2 films in my top 10 from that year, and we get Jaws.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Now I'm taking notes as you're going through the year. So I have a couple follow-up questions or some commentary.
Sure, of course. Sorry that I just, I'm going to do my little rant and then and then edit it down and then,
listen,
just edit it down if you wish. I'm not particular. Do what you have to do.
Here's the thing. Okay. This is not going to be edited. This is not made for TV. So we're gonna take our time. There's nothing to worry about.
I don't want to bore your listeners.
No, never. Okay, so Phil, first comment. All right, ready? Okay. For the listeners out there, a few months ago, Phil was kind enough to provide me a list of, I think it was 100 movies that I needed to watch, and I've been slowly going through that list. And I think you were shocked to find out that I had not seen any David Lean movies, let alone Bridge on the River Kwai. Having done that, I've since seen Dr. Zhivago. I've seen Bridge on the River Kwai. I've seen Lawrence of Arabia. I've seen The Dirty Dozen. I've seen multiple films. But every once in a while, you're going to list a movie that I have yet to see. That being said, Shampoo, I have not seen. I've heard of it. I am familiar with it, but it is now on my very, very short list of movies to watch. Okay, second comment on Dog Day Afternoon, which did Sidney Lumet, and forgive me for not knowing, I'm just asking, did he also direct Serpico?
He did indeed.
Okay, so
another great Pacino performance. I would rank it just below Dog Day, but it's terrific. It's a little more dated than Dog Day, but it's really good. Really good. My
memories of Dog Day, it's been a few years since I sat down and watched that film, but I second everything you said. It's an incredible movie and incredible performances. But I remember, or at least I can remember, I wasn't born yet. I was born in 78, the year Jaws 2 came out, everybody. So I remember the subject matter must have been incredibly heavy for 1975. I mean, the reason why he's robbing the bank, like that must have just been something that people hadn't really, in the.
Oh, yes. It's so ahead of its time. I mean, it's a story you could practically remake today. And you'd say, well, it's like, ripped straight out of the headlines. The thing about it, though, is it's, to me, yes, there's a big twist that Dana's referencing that we won't get into in this, because
won't
those
spoil.
of you that might decide to, see it, it's really good. And really modern and ahead of its time, and shocking, but because you don't see it coming at all. And right when the scene happens, you're kind of like, am I misunderstanding the scene? Like you don't even, your brain at first has to go, wait, is what I think is happening here? This doesn't make any sense. And then it does. But, it's the performances. I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, you go watch Cuckoo's Nest, Shampoo, and Dog Day. Because Jaws is more theatrical. It's great. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the performances. Robert Shaw, you You'll go in the water, shark in the water. I mean, come on, it's fantastic. But it's a bit theatrical, right? You know, we're going to need a bigger boat. It's all a bit theatrical in a great naturalistic way. I don't mean theatrical in a forced way, but you get into kind of the naturalistic, very naturalistic, almost it feels improvised performances of both, by the way, Shampoo and Dog Day. You'll be surprised. It's a technique you don't witness very often in entertainment anymore. It's out there. If I scrub my brain, I could probably think of some modern examples, but it's so naturalistic and you almost feel like you're watching a documentary, but of course you're not. It's totally structured and designed by Lumet. And I just don't think, and the Pacino we know today, who's very, very broad and very theatrical also, and, you know, lovable, and who doesn't like Al and all that. He's a genius and has made 50 million better films than I'll ever even think of making. But the performance he would give back then is really something to see. Same with Cazale. John Cazale is just an unbelievable actor. Unfortunately, died of cancer way too young, and shortly after The Deer Hunter. And anyway, yes, you will not be disappointed by any of those films. And I'll tell you what's interesting about Shampoo. Shampoo is a guy who kind of has it all. You know, it's funnily enough, it's about a hairdresser in Beverly Hills who has all these women at his beck and call, and it's really about getting everything you want. Does it really fulfill you in the end? And I think again, a very modern theme that a lot of people are asking and questioning in today's world. But there it was being questioned in 1975. So they're all four home runs.
Okay.
They're home runs for different reasons. Jaws just happens to be seminal, right? Jaws is just kind of like a monument to filmmaking. You cannot not pick Jaws.
The final question or final comment that I have, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, I watch a lot of YouTube. And one of the things I like to do is I like to watch old Academy Award acceptance speeches.
Yeah.
I go back to the early 70s. And I'm watching an acceptance speech where I believe Nicholson was, forgive me, I don't have it in front of me, but he wasn't able to accept an award because he was filming Cuckoo's Nest. And they do this great thing where you see all the actors from Cuckoo's Nest behind the scenes. And so I'm wondering if you recall, this was a hotly anticipated movie before it came out, right? Like everybody was sort of ready for this movie to make its debut, or was that just more or less inside the entertainment industry? Everyone was ready for this film to come out.
I was too young to be in touch with kind of the zeitgeist of that era, like what the temperature would have been in the entertainment and or general public. It was sold out when I went, opening weekend, and it was, I think, in the top 5 grossing films of that year. So, so I believe so. I believe, Nicholson was a major star. The book was the book. No one knew Milos Forman was, but I think that I believe, as I recall, that it was, it grossed $112 million in 75.
That's massive.
Okay, you guys. So that, that's insane. I don't even know let's see here. Calculator, give me one sec here, because that is crazy to think that a film like that today, no chance of doing 112, right?
That's 112 in 1975. That's not adjusted for inflation. That movie wouldn't do 112 today.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's incredible. It would be a lot. It would be $200-300 million easy. But so yeah, it was a top grossing movie of the year. Jaws did 260.
Yeah.
Cuckoo's Nest did 112.
Yeah. And Jaws famously was the first film to break 100 million, and another movie does that the same year. So that's incredible.
So just looking it up, 112 million, when you calculate for inflation right here on my inflation calculator, the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics says that that gross for Cuckoo's Nest, 112 million, would actually today be $638 million for a drama set entirely in a mental institution And let me just say, the ending is not very, is a little dark.
Yeah.
Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
It's a little dark. So you just can see the appetite in the general public for a kind of meaningful artistic drama was huge. And now it's just not for theaters. Now it's just not there.
Yeah. All right. So Phil, that's 1975. That is awesome. And, to be fair, I would have actually been shocked if Jaws wasn't the number one for you that year. But, that was interesting. Now, just setting the record straight, we're going to get into 76, 77, 78, 79, all those years. I, in my mind, feel like I know one more movie that will make your number one favorite of that particular year. I'm not going to say what that is, but to be clear, the rest of the years, I have no idea. So I'm excited. Let's get into 1976.
All right, here we go. 76. I'm gonna back into my number one, as I did before. A great movie, and again, I think as relevant today as ever. All the President's Men. Alan Pakula, director. You get Dustin Hoffman and Robert Redford, written by the great William Goldman, who also wrote most famously Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. You guys, again, just put it on, watch it. You'll be like, holy crap, why aren't they making movies like this? Well, they kind of do. I mean, they're kind of trying to. There's the one that was about, the Catholic, shoot. They
Spotlight. Yeah.
Spotlight, exactly. And then there's the one more recently about the opioid addiction stuff. But I'm telling you, none of them got Redford and Hoffman, or Joseph Robards. It just, the cast is incredible. It's shot by truly one of the greatest cinematographers ever in the history of cinema, Gordon Willis. He also shot a little film called The Godfather. And you'll love it. It's all about Woodward and Bernstein figuring out what was going on with Watergate. And it's really, it's not really a political thing. It's really just about getting to the bottom of the truth. And as we watch, our current state of affairs, it's pretty darn fascinating. Even now, I've seen it recently and it holds up so well. God, it's good. And just wait for the very end. The way Pakula decides to wrap up the story is so smart and so well done. I'm talking the last shot. You have to watch the movie to know. All right, next. My number, this is almost a tie. I went back and forth. It really is a tie for number one because I love both these films. It's amazing how many of these films are in my top 10. It's really funny, this just chunk. If you'd gone from 74, you probably would have gotten almost all of them. But I'm going to call it a tie between the aforementioned Sidney Lumet's Network, which is one of the most prescient films ever made. It will blow your mind if you haven't seen it. And Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. Let's start with Network. So I find it so hard. Again, loaded with incredible performances, more theatrical, the performances, than Dog Day Afternoon, the other Lumet film we discussed. And, it's famous for its line, "I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore," is the famous line from the movie, uttered by Peter Finch, who won the Oscar posthumously because he had died in between the release of the film and the Oscars. William Holden, Faye Dunaway, Robert Duvall. It's such a freaking knockout, and it's really it's about network TV. It predicts reality TV. And it really predicts the insanity of modern media. So you can't go wrong with that one. And it's just so much fun. The performances, the storytelling, the writing. Little writing named Patty Chayefsky wrote it, who is a great playwright and screenwriter. Brilliant man. And I have studied this film backwards and forwards and forwards and backwards. I even typed out some of the script once. just like line for line, because I wanted to feel what it was like to write brilliant dialogue. And I was like, I'm just going to put his script up and I'm going to sit and I'm going to just retype it and just see what the rhythm of writing like Paddy Chayefsky feels like. It's actually, for you writers out there, it's actually a really good, one of my other favorite writers, David Foster Wallace, who wrote Infinite Jest, also suggests the same thing. Take your favorite writer, put the book or screenplay next to your computer, and then just literally type it out word for word and see what it feels like to be in their rhythm. Anyway, I did that with Network. Taxi Driver. This really is the debut of Scorsese's genius. Now, you can really go back to Mean Streets, and Mean Streets really is the debut of his genius, and has many of the precursors to Taxi Driver, including a great performance by De Niro as Johnny Boy. But Taxi Driver has it all. Everything you're going to see Scorsese do going forward is in Taxi Driver. Everything. All the inserts, the use of music, the use of slow motion, the use of the movement of the camera, the camera not moving, the use of wide angles, everything he does, the editing style, that unique Scorsese pow, 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 editing style, matched with performances. Talk about naturalistic. Talk about where you're like, this feels so real, I'm uncomfortable watching this happen. I mean, there's some scenes with Sybil Shepherd and De Niro where you're just like, I don't really want to be here right now, but not in that way where there's some movies now that come out that I know are just going to be so painful. They're about child abuse, you know what I mean? Or they're about, like, I just don't want to go there for a Friday night. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, as much as, look at all dark, you'll see there's a lot of dark movies here that I like, but this is different. It's dark because it's about something. It's not just trying to make you feel shitty. It's not just trying to make you feel yucky about the world. It's fascinating. It's about a guy who wants to be something and do something with his life. An ex-Vietnam vet who feels lost, and he wants to be a hero. He wants to do good. And of course, it's that razor's edge. And he's so confused. He doesn't know what to do. And he ends up giving himself two choices. And you'll see in the film, if you watch it, the two choices he faces and how one doesn't happen for him and the other does. And it's quite, also the greatest, shy of the Wild Bunch, the greatest staged shootout in the history of cinema.
Interesting. Okay, wait a second. The greatest shootout. Okay, all right. You got my wheels turning there. However, while you were going through your list, I wrote down a couple notes here. Okay. Sure. So I want to, if we can remember, because I always come up with these, hey, let's do this for the rest of the episode. Then we do it for a couple and I completely forget. Dog Day Afternoon, inspired by a true story. All the President's Men, obviously inspired by a true story. So I just want to keep tabs of the films on your list that were based on actual events. Shampoo
was inspired by a real character that some of you may know of, John Peters.
Okay, yeah.
John Peters was the famous hairdresser and that had many, many girlfriends. Later, Barbara Streisand became a producer, but nobody knew that when they made Shampoo that was going to happen. So yeah, even they're inspired by real events, yes.
I watched Network 2 or 3 years ago for the first time. Again, I know, but I was always familiar with it. And you know what that movie, the response that movie elicited from me? Anger that we saw this coming back in the 70s, that there was not just a small little movie made about it, but a massively successful Oscar-winning film that identified the dangers of corporate media, network media, and all that stuff. And there was no lessons learned from it. In fact, it's just exponentially gotten worse. So that movie, actually, my first time watching it, yes, the performance is great, but I was angry.
There's a speech Ned Beatty gives Finch about who controls everything, and he leads it all back to oil.
Yeah.
Okay, gang, guess who just shut down 2 million barrels a day and is increasing inflation in the world as we record this podcast? Saudi Arabia. And our president went over there and said, please don't do this. We need the flow of oil to keep inflation down. And they said, nah, I think we're going to jack up the price. It's the same speech that Ned Beatty, and he won, I think he won an Oscar for just that speech. He's only in the film for like 6 minutes, and the guy made this speech. It's a monologue. In fact, that's the monologue I typed out. I was just telling you about. And you're sitting there watching and going, wait a second, 75, 85, 95, 2005, 2015, 47 years later, and we're still having the same freaking conversation. It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's so freaking ahead of its time. It makes me want to just like hop up and down. I mean, you guys, it's just what filmmaking can be and should be and aspire to. Same with Taxi Driver, same with All the President's Men. That year was just a freaking slam dunk. It's also the year of Rocky.
Yeah.
A wonderful film. And if you go back and take away all the cliches, it's become, again, a very naturalistic film, no, I don't have a phone. Who needs the aggravation? It's just a guy standing there, Talia Shire in that room. It's all wrong. I mean, I loved that movie as a kid. Does it make my best top? But I loved it. And if you go back, it's really, really good in its own raw way. But yeah, it's just Network is so ahead of its time. It's spooky.
Yeah. Yeah. What I wrote down for Taxi Driver, because when it comes to Martin Scorsese, he's in a class of his own, like other filmmakers. There's certain filmmakers that their films are unmistakable. When you're watching them, you're watching a particular director. And I'm not going to go through that list, but there is definitely his own style. That being said, the grittiness and raw feelings that I have, even just for the city of New York in that movie, when you look at what New York City is today, when you look at what Manhattan is today, and you look at how it was captured and photographed in that, for that movie, for Taxi Driver, it seems like two different cities altogether. Like it's unbelievable. I hate to use this word, that's sort of the griminess that New York had to it. And I don't think there was any set designer out there that had to really rework the streets for him to shoot it. It was
no. They made the movie for $1.4 million and they just shot what was there. It had not yet become the playground of the rich. It just had not yet become, a place where really only wealthy people or people who are going to really, really struggle could afford to live on the island of Manhattan, at least, south of Central Park and, I guess, now the whole, it just became really a whole different thing in the, ensuing 20, 30 years. And yeah, if you want a slice of New York in the 70s, you basically, Taxi Driver is your movie.
I've credited you with capturing the last bastion of New York before it started to go through the transformation with State of Grace. Because I remember my first trip to New York was 95. And by that point, Times Square was already a safe place to go. So, So I remember crediting you.
Yeah. State of Grace in 89, it was still strip clubs and still, peekaboo movie theaters. And it was still, it was grimy and rough and tough. And yeah, Times Square at 2 a.m. was not somewhere you would want to be walking around. And now it's, safe as Disneyland. So it's really, really changed. And I don't know, people can say for better or for worse. I guess that's personal taste and opinion, but visually, no way it's gotten better. And Taxi Driver just captures it because it had texture. New York still has texture. Don't get me wrong. It's my favorite city in the world to shoot in, but there's no city and the boroughs. There's no, the New York and the New York area. There's no greater place to shoot. And if I'd had my way, I would have been a New York filmmaker who made films in and about New York. And I tried to do that. It's a whole nother story why that didn't work out. But, films like Taxi Driver made me want to aspire to that because there's just so much going on the street.
When I watch Taxi Driver, the one thing I say, I don't have to suspend disbelief when I watch Taxi Driver. When I'm watching this film, I feel like that there were characters like this. There were people like this in the 1970s. And I'm going to use the word that I don't normally like to use when I'm when I'm speaking of a Martin Scorsese film. I get uncomfortable watching that movie. It's not, if I'm going to go through Scorsese's films, like obviously, After Hours, Casino, Goodfellas, all of those films are immediately the ones that pop to my mind. If someone says, hey, you want to watch Taxi Driver? I'm like, well, it's an amazing film, but God, it makes me so damn uncomfortable every time I watch it. But that should just, again, speak to the power of cinema. If a film does that to you.
Right. Well, and also for me now, I've seen it so many times. To me, what I marvel at is the technique of all involved. The writing, the performances, the cinematography, the editing, the direction, obviously, that encompasses all of that. The use of music, and Bernard Herrmann's score, which was his last score before he died. And it was, to me now, I marvel at it as a piece of art. I no longer kind of even can look at it as having, my emotional reaction to it is how it's made now versus the content. But I know exactly what you're saying. For those of you that might be watching it for the first time or revisiting it, yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's, to me, a lot of uncomfortable filmmaking today feels manipulative to me. Today feels like I'm going to horrify you with the truth of XYZ. This is just like, hi, here he is.
Yeah.
Here's Travis Bickle. Look, here's Travis Bickle eating cereal. Oh, look, he just put bourbon in his cereal. It's like, oh, here's Travis Bickle with his knife, with his gun, with his plot to assassinate a senator. What? Say that last part again. What? He's going to try to do what? And it just happens. It just unfolds as opposed to just getting like a pie smashed in your face of pain.
I'm going to give full credit to Tarantino when I bring this up, because I did see him. I did hear him mention this when he was on Rogan, but it's something that I happen to agree with, and I want to get your take on it. So I'm not plagiarizing anyone when I'm asking this question. Tarantino said that the 70s movies, what set them apart from any other genre was that the protagonist of the story could also be the antagonist at the same time. Hence, the anti-hero was the star of the movie. And I think if there was ever a true definition of that, I think Taxi Driver would be a perfect example of that film.
And Cuckoo's Nest and Shampoo and Dog Day. Several of the ones you've already mentioned.
Yeah.
They're both extremely flawed, somewhat unlikable in some ways, and totally likable in others. And you end up rooting for people that on paper you don't think you ever would.
Yeah.
Like if you just wrote out who they are and what they've done on paper, you'd be like, oh God, I'm not going to root for that guy. And again, it's a testament to also performance. I think he's absolutely right about that. Absolutely right. And that's yes in the writing, but boy, if you don't have De Niro playing it, if you don't have Beatty playing it, if you don't have Pacino playing it, it's a horse of a different color. And you can see all kinds of anti-hero movies in the 70s and later where actor just can't quite, because you both have to be charming and fascinating and compelling and at the same time off-putting and, kind of a little scary and a little strange and a little like, I'm not sure I really would want to be in a car with this guy. Holy crap, I can't take my eyes off him.
Yeah.
That's Travis Bickle. That's true of Dog Day. Even Shampoo, he's sleazy, but you like him.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting.
And that's what I think why these films hold up for me is they're not the most, most of these are not black and white characters. Most of the films I'm going to mention here, although not all, have this gray area. And I think that's, dramatically speaking, just holds up because it's much more interesting over time because it's less predictable, right? You get used to the archetype and the archetype becomes predictable. This is the problem with films we have today. Like a lot of these movies, I don't need to go see. I see the trailer and I'm like, I know what this is because there's not going to be anything unpredictable in it besides, how much they can how much money they can spend on CG. That's really the only unpredictable aspect of the big films today for me.
You said the key word there, interesting. Interesting, and I'll add to that, engaging. If a film keeps you engaged from start to finish, like I know there's a movie out there that came out this year that seems to be a 50-50 split. People either absolutely love it, they don't love it at all, and it's the film that had me so engaged that I've seen it 4 times now, and I'm not talking about Top Gun Maverick. I'm talking about Jordan Peele's Nope. I found that to be one of the most engaging films that I've seen in the past probably 10 years. But it was interesting, it was engaging, it was original. Anyway, I'm sorry.
No question.
Not gonna,
no doubt about that.
So, that being said, of your number one, your tie for number one, number two, plus your honorable mention, I have seen all of those films. So 76, I've got to...
I think you've seen most of the ones I'm going to have down here from here on out. Maybe 1 or 2.
Let's go into the year of 1977. Now, I'm going to be interested because I know the top 2 grossing films of that year. One was put out by Universal, one was put out by 20th Century Fox, and I'm curious if either of them make either your honorable mentions or your number one. So 1977, Phil, the floor is yours.
What are the 2 films? I'm not looking at grosses right now. What were the 2 films?
Star Wars and Smokey and the Bandit.
Either one made it, baby.
All right.
Sorry.
All right.
Sorry. You know, I was at Star Wars opening day. I was probably like 6th or 7th in line at 10 a.m. They didn't have Thursday previews back then, on Friday morning in Westwood. So I got up at 7 in the morning, drove out with my friends, got in line, for 10 a.m. And no one knew, by the way, that Star Wars was Star Wars, right? So it wasn't like there was a giant line around the corner like there were for the sequels. Anyway, until it came out and everyone flipped. And I loved it. I'll never forget that opening shot. And I loved it. But over time, and even at the time, I'm going to give you my number one film first.
Okay.
The film for me, it was the film of that year that is better than Star Wars.
Can I tell you, I already know what it is.
You do.
I already know what it is.
You know what it is.
Better
than Star Wars.
Okay, that's a bold statement that we're going to unpack in just a moment.
Sorry, and I'm not giving my home address, so you can all come burn down my house. I said that. Forget it. But it's better than Star Wars. Sorry, everyone.
I'm going to ask you this question because this is important, because I know there's going to be a lot of first-time watchers, first-time viewers of this movie. Currently on YouTube, YouTube does offer movies free, or if you have YouTube Premium, commercial free. They have Close Encounters of the Third Kind, the director's cut, and I'm
boo.
Okay, so that's
boo.
Okay, so we need to seek out
Encounters of the Third Kind was the best movie made that year, in my opinion, my not so humble opinion. And you do not want to see the director's cut. You do not want to see the special edition. You want to see the original 1977 Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So what happened was they convinced Steven, to milk it. And we know that he has a predilection for milking that. Look at how many Jurassics there have been. And I think that although he showed great restraint, never making a sequel to E.T., you got to give him that. You could have brought that little mushy guy back to any old family, to any old situation, and people would have stampeded to see E.T. back in the 80s. So let's give him that. But lots of Raiders, right? Lots of Raiders movies and lots of Jurassic. So we know that he likes to expand upon his worlds. And there was stuff that he wanted to add, and there's a few sequences he added and some sequences he took out. But the reason you don't want to see those versions is he really reduced there's a paranoid side to that movie in which Richard Dreyfuss's character thinks he's seen UFOs, knows he's seen UFOs, and the government and other people are trying to repress, the idea that UFOs are out there. And they discredit him and make him feel crazy. And he, in fact, goes crazy to the point where his family leaves him. Like his wife practically runs him over with their station wagon out in his robe with that whole fantastic scene out front. The movie contains the most naturalistic, performances that's, I think Spielberg, there's other films that he did it, but one of the most naturalistic films in terms of performances that Spielberg's ever done. Believe it or not, Sugarland Express, his very first film, also has incredible performances. And I do recommend that if you've never seen Sugarland. It's a great movie, and everything, you'll see it and go, oh my God, Spielberg, there it is. There it is. It was, he never needed CG or special effects to prove how good he was. He could do anything. So it is, to me, yeah, there is all the other versions you don't want to see. It'll ruin it for you. It's not right. It's not the one. Interestingly enough, Paul Schrader was the original writer on this, and he conceived of it with Steven. It was called Dark Skies. What else did Paul Schrader write? A little movie called Taxi Driver. Yeah. So from Taxi Driver to Close Encounters for Paul Schrader, Steven ended up rewriting the whole thing. And it's, again, one of the few sole screenplay credits you'll see Steven take in his career. Even this new one that he's done about his childhood, he co-wrote, I think, with Tony Kushner, I want to say. So it's just, most people have probably seen it. To me, the effects, it's no CG, it's all miniatures. Doug Trumbull at his best, the effects supervisor. Vilmos Zsigmond shot it. Just fantastic performances, all that stuff with the family. So watch if you go back to it, watch the scenes where they're trying to decide, and he wants them to watch Pinocchio, and they want to go play goofy golf, and they're smashing things in the background, and the kids are going nuts, and Terry Garr's like, stop that racket, and they're trying to make, and he's doing his train stuff, and it's so it's so believable. Yeah. It's just so real. When he runs in to wake up the kids, so he can drag them out to see, and they're all sleeping in funny positions in the beds, and all the family and his wife's like, what, Roy, what's going on? What are you doing? It's like, you believe it. You believe here's this family in the middle of some suburb, and he's just this guy who works for the electric company who suddenly has had this experience. And it's really powerful, I think, because it really puts you in the driver's seat of being, excuse the reference, but he's literally in the driver's seat when he has his first close encounter. And that sequence, he's sitting in his truck, and this alien ship comes over his electrical, company truck. Oh my God, you watch that. Watch that and get ready to watch some filmmaking. The opening scene, and I think it's like somewhere in Mexico, like Sonora Desert, I want to say, is just a tour de force in filmmaking. Absolutely. Bob Bauman at the end, and I don't understand. You guys, anyone listening, this is a classic at the highest level.
Even the scene right after, and I don't want to spoil what happens in that opening scene in the desert, but even the scene afterwards where we're at the air traffic control center, and you don't see anything. It is just, you just hear the audio of the pilots, and there's a line, and obviously we know this is about UFOs, where the ATC controller says, do you want to report a UFO? And there's that pause, and the pilots are like, nope, we do not. It's incredible. Just incredible.
So, yeah, come on, Star Wars is a blast. I loved it as much as anybody. I probably saw it 7 times in the theater, blah, blah, blah. I mean, but over time, at the time, and over time, I'd have to go with Close Encounters. My number two, which to me, again, was unlike any movie I'd ever seen before. My number 2 is Annie Hall.
Okay.
By Woody Allen. And I had never seen a comedy like that. I'd never seen a movie like that. I'd never seen characters turn and talk to the camera like he did. There's an animated sequence in the middle of it. It just, the whole track of it was the way it's structured editorially, and again, the performances, the way the story is told. It's a great, great movie.
Okay, let me ask you this. If I'm only able to watch one movie tonight for the first time, and my choice is Shampoo or Annie Hall, what should my choice be?
Annie Hall.
Okay, done. That's another one that I'm so familiar with, but I've never actually sat down and watched.
I know a lot of people have feelings about Woody Allen, today. but I'm not gonna go into that. I'm not gonna, I'm just gonna talk about the movie. And if you can set aside those of you out there that have a problem with Woody Allen, you probably shouldn't watch it because you won't enjoy it because he's the co-star. I absolutely loved it, and it had a big impact on me as a filmmaker. And in fact, it inspired my student film, the one that Spielberg saw. So Last Chance Dance. So Last Chance Dance, while not even 2% as good as Annie Hall, it was very inspirational. His style of filmmaking was very inspirational to me in many, many ways. And I still believe, he will go down 100 years from now and as one of the great, like Charlie Chaplin, like one of the great filmmakers of the 20th century.
I'm a fan of his work, and I can't believe I've never seen Annie Hall. What can I say? All right, did you have another one for 77, or are we moving on?
I really didn't.
Okay.
I really didn't. Those were my two.
Okay, so 1978. All right, now, let me just tell you a little bit about 1978. Like I said, a couple important things happened that year. Universal decided to release a sequel to its highest grossing film of all time. That would be Jaws 2. Spielberg had no involvement in it, but Zanuck and Brown decided to go ahead and make the movie anyway because I think the quote I heard from them was, well, if we don't make it, somebody else will, so we better go ahead and just make this movie. I know I've asked you this before, but I'll just recap. Jaws 2, I'm sure you saw it in the theater.
I did.
Okay. I'm going to tell you right now, some 44 years later, I've become quite the fan of this movie. Now, it's not Jaws by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a real movie from start, beginning, middle, and end. And I actually have got quite an affinity for the film.
Yeah, I actually have no recollection of Jaws 2 at all. I remember seeing it. I probably liked it fine. But as I think I've mentioned to you, what really struck me was the giant difference, and I have no idea who directed Jaws 2, but the giant difference between the difference a director makes. And that just looking at one guy, Spielberg, telling a story about a shark terrorizing this small community versus another guy telling a story about a shark coming back, or another shark coming back too, because they blew the first one up, another shark coming back and terrorizing the community. Is just night and day. It's just, even if the script, even if this, even if that, the filmmaking, it's like Michael Jordan versus another pro.
Yeah.
That you never heard of.
Well,
and look, he made it to the pros, so good for that person, but that directed Jaws too, but boy, you're going up against Jordan, so sorry.
So Gino Schwarzak is the director. So he's a French director, and he did a lot of television. He directed a couple episodes of Columbo, Night Gallery.
So did Spielberg. That's why I brought that up. Yep. He directed episodes of The $6 Million Man. Let's see. A lot of television in the 70s. Kojak, The Rockford Files. And then Jaws 2 looks to be his first big feature film. He goes on to do Somewhere in Time, Enigma, Supergirl, Santa Claus the movie, and I'm telling you that he was born in, let me see here, he was born in 1939 in Paris, and he is still a working director today. He did some episodes of Grey's Anatomy last year. So he's been at it for a while. Some other things that happened in 1978. On a cool April morning, I was born. So that's another reason why 78 is important. So I'm very curious to hear the movies that are on your list in 1978. The floor is yours. Well, as you were being birthed, what city were you birthed in?
Okay,
Dana?
so I was born in a very small town called New Glasgow in Nova Scotia, Canada.
Woo!
So
nice.
Yeah, and then eventually we moved from New Glasgow to Halifax, and that's where I lived to the age of 15 before I moved to the United States.
Wow, that's awesome. You never told me that.
I can't believe we never told you that I was. Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely.
Get that. Well, while you were being birthed in New Glasgow. I was in line for my number one pick in Westwood.
All right, give me a hint.
Theater.
All right, give me a hint about the movie.
I was at an Academy. It was in a 1 week Academy Awards pre-screening in 78 because it actually then came out in 79.
Oh, I already know.
Christmas 78. It then came out technically in 79, but they needed to be in theaters to be eligible for Oscars. You had to buy a ticket weeks in advance, which I did and only because it had my favorite actor in it, and that is called The Deer Hunter. And it has its supporters, it has its detractors, but I'll tell you, I went into this movie knowing nothing. It's the most pure cinematic experience I've ever had in my life to date, because there was just no anything. It was just, they just put an ad in the paper. I saw De Niro. I saw it was something about the Vietnam War. I got the tickets. I pre-ordered the tickets and I went with a few of my friends. And you got to imagine like sitting in The Deer Hunter and you're just like, what on earth is going on? And Cimino just made this movie where the first hour is virtually plotless.
Yeah.
I mean, you just see a slice of these people's lives. There's a little romantic tension between De Niro and Streep, and there's some tension amongst the buddies, and John Cazale's kind of a loose cannon, and De Niro gets angry with him, and there's stuff going on, and you can see, and the next thing you know, they're in Vietnam. On a hard cut. I'd never seen storytelling like it. On a hard cut, I'm in Vietnam, and here come the Viet Cong and explosions and gunfire, and I have no idea what's going on. It was just mind blowing. And then it rips forward from there. I was really, really emotionally moved by that film. Maybe because, I was in high school and, my male friendships, you kind of are bonding. And I had a pocket of male friend, my buddies. And it's really a movie about buddies. It's really a movie about this handful of buddies. And yes, the women, but it's really male centric. And I was just really moved by it. There's a very famous Russian roulette scene in it that is one of the most intense pieces of cinema ever made. I know I have a lot of hyperbole in this, but you did ask me like the best of each section. So anyway, De Niro at his peak. Christopher Walken, first time I'd seen him. Although, that's not true. He has a little cameo in Annie Hall. Okay. Christopher Walken. You'll enjoy that. And so anyway, 1978, my favorite was The Deer Hunter.
Okay, so a couple things on The Deer Hunter. And I've seen this film three, maybe four times in my lifetime, and then rewatched it a couple years ago. And you're right. If you went into this not knowing anything, you got these guys working in a steel mill, and I just remember just the scene of how they have to hang their clothes up because they're so, just like these little slices of life that these guys are, it's got to be such a difficult job, but then they're off to a wedding and they're going, hence the title, they're going deer hunting. But if you did not tell anyone what this movie was about for the first 45 minutes to an hour, you're going to be like, what am I watching? Hard cut, as you say, to some of the most intense Vietnam scenes I've seen. The Russian roulette scene is incredibly visceral and tough to watch. And, how the movie concludes is also incredibly tough to watch. But you said something you said when you were first announcing this as your top pick. And this is one of two other movies that I know are going to be, I feel like I know what next year's top pick is going to be as well. But you said that this movie has its detractors, and that's the first I've heard. And I'm wondering if you can sort of explain where, because this to me, I look at this as one of the most universally beloved films of the 1970s. Now, where was some controversy on this?
Well, there was another movie called Coming Home with Jane Fonda and John Voight. Also by the director I've mentioned before, Hal Ashby. And, it's a really terrific movie, but it was really about, kind of the ugliness of what war does. And John Voight playing a paraplegic and Vietnam vet, and his relationship with Jane Fonda. So at the time, there were kind of two camps that a lot of people thought the Deer Hunter was kind of jingoistic and macho and, kind of pro-violence and, pro kind of, you do your duty as a man and you go to war, you fight it out and you come home and you kind of have a stiff upper lip about it and you suck it up and you don't, you're not open and you're not emotional and you're stoic about it. And all of which is in that movie. And there really was, if you went back and looked up, there were quite a few articles and there's quite a bit of controversy about the movie being too kind of macho. Would be the kind of, even the, and that then they said, oh, the Russian roulette thing never really happened in Vietnam, and they never did that to prisoners, and that's like, and of course it's a metaphor. I mean, the scene, it was a huge argument over whether the Russian roulette had ever occurred and how it was a dishonest scene or sequence.
Interesting.
And yeah, and there were people say, no, they found examples that it did occur, and I always thought that's just like, it's beside the point. What he was trying to depict was, you go in, you're walking through the jungle, the guy next to you dies, you don't. Why? It's Russian roulette. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Just spin the chamber. You come home, you come home alive, you go home dead. There's no, and what it does is it puts you emotionally in the place of a soldier in any war, I would think, knowing that any given moment, there's a click and it could be an empty chamber or a bullet. And you could be sitting there and you get killed. You could be in the middle of a battle, you get killed. You could be in a helicopter crashes, you get killed. It just, or not. Helicopter crashes, you live, the guy next to you flies out and dies. And so it's the random nature. What I thought it did was, and again, I was young, but what it did for me is it made me feel that fear and that on edge. And then you could extrapolate that to, well, imagine that every single day for a year or two. And who you'd be. Who would you be when you came home? Who would you be if it happened to your friends? Who would you be if you witnessed these things? And I thought that, yes, while the characters really were stoic, particularly De Niro, there's also some very emotional, portrayals in the film that are vulnerable. So I don't know. It was, maybe I'm thinking of more at the time. And I think Cimino, went on to become a very controversial filmmaker and had his detractors after Heaven's Gate. And he went a little off the rails in his career. And so it's funny how it's not really put in the pantheon of what's going to be my next number one pick, which is the obvious. It's not put in the same category as Taxi Driver or Close Encounters or Jaw, of the classics. It's funny how it is a great film, but because of its length, because of its pace, because of its style of storytelling, most people probably even can't get past the first hour in today's world, right? You're watching it at home, you go, what the hell is this? You had to be stuck in a theater. You had to be there. Generally speaking, no one walks out of a movie unless they're grossly offended. So you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound, you sit through it. But if you sit through it and you make it through that wedding sequence that's interminable, one would think I wrote a paper in film school about how the whole first third of that movie is what makes the second 2/3 work. And that if you truncated the first third and not watched all those slice of life details and teeny little moments that made up their lives, the second part, kind of Vietnam forward, would not have had the impact it did. And to me, that was such a bold, brave, crazy choice by Cimino, that to this day, you'd be hard pressed to watch another mainstream release that attempts what The Deer Hunter did.
It's interesting how I would love to, if you still have that, I would love to read that paper about the first third, because I agree with you that because we've spent so much time with these characters by the time we're emotionally invested into each and every one of them. They each have their own little arcs within that first third of the movie. And that is something that is sorely missing in today's films. Like I cite the movie Zero Dark 30 with Catherine Bigelow, which I think is a very, very good movie.
I agree. I really liked it.
What I would have liked to have seen, and believe me, I am not a filmmaker, but just from my...
But you're a moviegoer who loves movies,
yes.
So you appreciate and understand and dissect storytelling. So you don't have to be a filmmaker to understand how it works. Go on.
Okay. And I want to preface this by saying I like Zero Dark 30. I think it's an excellent film.
Yes.
Where I feel like things might have been a little bit more intense in that final raid on the compound is we go through years in this movie. We start it, in 2001 and we go all the way through up to 2011. I would have liked to have seen maybe a C plot or a B plot with these Navy SEALs.
No question.
Going through with their experience, because this isn't their first deployment. They've obviously been involved in all kinds of things throughout the years. So let me see their story leading up to, let them intersect with each other. So
no question. And it's absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And particularly because we know the ending of the sequence. Like we know the helicopter crashed. We know that they get bin Laden. We know how that's going to play out. It's fascinating the way a little dark, a little hard to see. But setting that aside, it was really funny. And I love dark stuff. Like, I'm not this guy who complains about Game of Thrones being too dark. It's like, that's pretty dark. I was like, TV's perfect. I saw it actually at home. But I was like, wow, this is really dark. But setting that aside, I agree. It's really tough. Look, you had an appreciation back in 77 when he made the movie. You had an appreciation for a filmmaker's vision. And when people bought, meaning the studio, the financiers, bought into an idea for a movie, and particularly with certain filmmakers. I mean, this guy had made, what was it called? Not Thunderbolt and Lightning. What was it? The movie with Clint Eastwood?
Thunderbolt and Lightfoot.
It was Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. There it is. Not Thunderbolt and Lightning. Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. Yeah. And I mean, the guy had done. But he obviously had this vision, and he got this cast, and they said go, and they supported his cut. And I think that had Catherine had that extra 20 minutes, they just said, cut it.
Yeah.
So there's just, the commercial pressures that came into making movies to make a lot of money really begins as the 80s roll up. And as Spielberg slam dunks it with E.T., as we'll see in 82, it really, Jaws and Star Wars, they're like, wow, only Steven and only George know how to do that. But as time goes on, people are like, wait a second, there's ways to make hundreds of millions of dollars. And once that became a part of filmmaking, it became really tough to do dramatic, dramatic films.
And I'm not going to skip over 79 for obvious reasons, but would Cimino's Heaven's Gate also be responsible for ending the era of those dramatic 5-hour movie, if you look at some of it? But did he help kind of destroy the long form
there? Yeah, I don't know. For a while there, no, I wouldn't lay that on Heaven's Gate or on him. I think it's just about money.
Because I want to tell you, watching Heaven's Gate for the first time 6 years ago, I was blown away. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that a big production like this felt, now obviously having not seen David Lean movies before, prior to that, I said, this is clearly like, when I'm watching David Lean, I'm like, oh my God, I'm seeing all these parallels, like these big, epic films. And we don't get those anymore unless they're animated 100%.
But not only that, but when you watch the ride on Aqaba in Lawrence of Arabia, there's not a CG camel in the shot. So when you watch 1,000 guys on horseback and camel come across the desert to attack this stronghold on the coast, you're seeing it. And they staged it, and they did it, and they shot it, and it happened. And now you would have a CG desert, a CG stronghold, CG camels, CG riders, there'd be some close-ups done, somewhere in the Mojave or against green screen. And, you just go, okay, well, whatever. I mean, story is story. If you enjoy the story, fine. But in terms of execution and the thrill of understanding and being kind of taken aback by what it took. Yeah, that Heaven's Gate is one of those. Yeah. And no, I don't think Heaven's Gate was very specific. There were still films, where directors got to do their thing later on. I think it was just as a worldwide audience grew and as you could make money internationally and you could make, $1 billion, it just really changed what people were willing to make. Green light.
All right.
All right.
Are we on to 79 or do you have an honorable mention for 78? Okay.
For 78. Oh, no, I have 3, but I'm just going to go through them quickly because there are 3 guilty pleasures that I just think are really the next 3 great movies of that year. Okay. One is Animal House, which I think is an absolute classic and one of the greatest comedies ever made. The next one is Halloween, the original, John Carpenter's, because it created a genre unto itself. Yeah, it really, every single horror, slasher, Friday, that you name it, that's come after, and that's why it still works today. The tune of this new trilogy they created, and then last. And introduced us all to John Carpenter, right? Yep. Who then went on to become, again, a filmmaker with an incredibly strong point of view. And last but not least, Grease. Because Grease brought back the musical. Grease, anyone who's alive at that time will never forget Grease. Will never forget 78, the year of Grease. If you got to see Grease with your friends and, what the music was and what the whole thing was, I mean, to this day, Grease still has an impact and is still, and Olivia Newton-John just passed away. I mean, on and on and on people went, and rightly so. It's a really, again, it's a plant your flag movie. Animal House was a plant your flag. Halloween was a plant your flag. And Grease was a plant your flag movie. You never forget all 3 of them when you saw them or where you saw them. For those of you that couldn't see them in the theaters at the time, I'm so sorry because they were fantastic movie-going experiences. Were they the Deer Hunter? Obviously, totally different, but no less memorable or entertaining.
All right, real quick, just go through Animal House. Well, seen it, love it. Curious to hear your thoughts on John Landis movies moving forward, but that's a discussion for a whole nother episode. Halloween. Anyone listening knows that we just did a whole franchise retrospective. I just released my review of the new Halloween film, which I'm one of the few people in America that loved it. And Grease is the word. I mean, what do we say? I mean, that's it. I will say this. I would say the Frankie Valli song, the opening theme song, is a top 10 song for me, period. Like, I think it is just one of the great songs of all time. And you'll find me listening to it in my car on Spotify, driving down the highway. I'll just put that song on. I love the whole soundtrack, but something about that opening song I think is just tremendous.
The film was just filled with joy. That's the thing about it, is it's filled with joy. And there's not that many movies that are just so joyful and very clear on their tone. It's, listen, I've probably said this to you before, but tone is the hardest thing for any filmmaker to keep control over. And we can do a whole podcast about tone in cinema and where it gets away from people and where it works. The tone of Grease from start to finish is perfect. It never steps outside itself. It knows exactly what it is. It knows exactly what it's trying to do. The fact that all the high school kids look like they're 30, that's part of the tone, right? If they had mixed in some real 18-year-olds, that would have screwed up the tone. The extras look 30. The actors look 30. And that's great. That's the fun of it. And of course, everything, the visuals, the music. I mean, Randall Kleiser just outdid himself. The cast, everyone, it's a classic. It's a classic. And, you may not like musicals. You may think it's goofy, but I'm telling you, that sucker is a hell of a well-made movie. And it's hard to do. it looks so, oh, you just go out and have fun and dance and sing. Oh my God. Do you know how many ways that can go wrong? Look how many recent musicals have gone wrong, gang. Cats, you can't go wrong. It was a massive hit. 18 billion people saw it. Everyone loves Cats. Well, so it's not as easy to do as you think.
Yep. All right. 1979. I already know what the answer is.
Well, of course you do. It's Star Trek, the motion picture. And the reason why Star Trek, the motion picture is number one.
Because you worked on it.
There's a guy on it, special visual consultant, Phil Joanou. And you can't really beat my first credit, Star Trek.
I love it.
The motion picture.
I love it.
Well, I'm going to work up to it.
Well, let me just say that, okay, if you're going to work up to it before you announce it, I just want to make sure that it's established that if people have listened to Jim Hemphill and I do our top 10 practical effects movies, my number one was given with full credit to you. So.
Well, okay. So I'm just going to give there. This is a great year. This was my senior year in high school. Oh, crap. Yeah, I know. Yes, I was riding a donkey. School every day. We had stone tablets. So 79, there I was. All of these theaters in the cinema. Suck on that, ladies and gentlemen. None of you get to have the movie-going childhood I did. Okay, that's my evil villain. Cinema evil villain. All right, here we go. I'm going to go with The Rose.
Oh,
The Rose, everybody. And oh my God, you want to see a performance? Bette Midler, you've never seen anything like it from her before or since. So well done. It's a really terrific movie about a Janis Joplin-esque character in the world of rock and roll. There is just scene after scene after scene where she is incredible. It's a really, really good film. Mark Rydell, director. All right, next one up, Being There. One of my favorite all-time actors, Peter Sellers. Again, good old Hal Ashby pops up again. Third time he's popped up in this conversation. Caleb Deschanel, one of the great cinematographers, shot it. It's a fantastic movie. Also from a very important book, Being There. God, listen to all these movies I have from 79. It was really rough for me. I loved this year. Bob Fosse's All That Jazz. Roy Scheider, if you've seen him in Jaws, you will not believe he can be a song and dance man on Broadway, but he is. And it's originally Richard Dreyfuss was cast as the part. Bob Fosse fired him. And at the last second brought in Roy Schneider after they'd actually begun shooting. So this guy jumped into this part and dunks it. It is great. Jessica Lange, young Jessica Lange in it, who's fantastic. Yeah, the whole damn thing. All That Jazz will blow your mind. John Lithgow's in it in a part. You'll be so shocked. You'll be like, what? That's how good it is. Fosse was an incredible director, best known for Cabaret, but I think All That Jazz is better. That's my own little opinion. I'm going to go in again with good old Woody Allen in Manhattan. I cannot leave Manhattan out. It's maybe one of the greatest black and white films ever photographed, again by Gordon Willis, who I mentioned earlier, on All the President's Men. He also shot Annie Hall. And it's just unbelievable. If you don't like Woody Allen, you really won't like it, but because he is the whole thing, but it is great. And then I'd be remiss if I left out Alien, because you just can't leave out Alien. It was a great year, gang. And yes, Ridley, I'd seen his Duelist, his previous film. I'd seen that, so I knew who he was, but no one knew that was coming. All right, so here we are. Those are all great films, but none of them are number one. Because number one is, oh yeah, you know what's coming. It's one of a kind. Apocalypse Now! For me, my favorite film ever made. So Apocalypse Now is my favorite movie. It's my number one. Funnily enough, my number two is right there, just a millimeter below The Godfather, also directed by Francis Coppola, one of my all-time cinematic heroes. But Apocalypse for me, again, it might have been where I was in my life and how much it inspired me as a filmmaker, to be a filmmaker, to become a filmmaker. I hadn't yet gotten in film school. Saw it opening, like Star Wars, opening morning at the Cinerama Dome in Hollywood. I will never forget as the opening shot faded up over the jungle and surround sound had just been installed in theaters. And that first helicopter flies across the frame. And then you hear thump, 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 thump. It goes around behind me in the dome. Thump, 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 thump. Then it comes all the way to the front of the screen. I'm like, what? And then up comes the doors. And then this is the end. And whoosh, the napalm drop. Okay. Had me at hello. What can I tell you? The movie was, I was like, and that's it. My favorite movie ever made. So you dropped napalm and you got me. You hooked me. That's all I can say, especially with the doors and a bunch of helicopters in slow motion. So everything about it. It is the last time you will ever see an epic shot in camera on that level, ever. There was never one like it after. There weren't very many before. David Lean probably came the closest, or matched it. I shouldn't say came the closest. David Lean matched it on several occasions. Zhivago, Kwai, and Lawrence of Arabia are all three physical production masterpieces, and just masterpieces, period. But Vertero Storaro cinematography, everything about it. You go into the jungle, you spend over a year making a film, you put up all your own money, as Coppola did, to finance it, budget doubles. All that is beside the point, because for me, the execution on every level, the performances, the way the story was told, what it leads to, everything with Kurtz for me. Some people thought the movie slowed down at that point. I loved the Kurtz material. It's just, yes, everyone talks about the Ride of the Valkyrie sequence, and it is incredible, but the whole movie is. And if you've ever shot on water too, let me tell you, shooting on a boat is as painful as it gets. It is so hard to shoot on water, to get your actors to the boat, to get the equipment to the boat, to get the boat point in the right direction, to get it's floating. Everything's floating. Everything's moving. Nothing's nailed down. And yet look at that cinematography. It is a masterpiece and will never be matched. If someone tried to remake it today, just think, every single one of those helicopters would be CG. Yeah. That napalm would be fake. No one's dropping napalm in a jungle anywhere in the world for a movie. No one's going to risk lives the way they did, putting those choppers in the air with actors. It goes on and on and on. It would be, here's a good example. I'm not knocking this movie. It's the way they make movies now. But if any of you saw Jungle Cruise, right? You're on a boat on a river. No, they weren't. I know they shot a little bit in Hawaii. I saw the behind the scenes here and there. Yes, they shot a little bit with exterior, at the end of the day, all that boat stuff is green screen. All that jungle is CG. All that river is CG. Because why would you? Why would you spend the money to go into a river and people camping out in the jungle? And they built a production hub in the jungle. No hotels where they were. They built it. So had food choppered in, had generators for electricity. Just the physical, but set that aside. Even if it was easy, it's still a great movie. Just all the other stuff as a filmmaker blows my mind. And more than that, it's over. It will never be replicated. Never.
So
there you go.
My question is, because, and I knew, and everybody listening, this was if I was a betting man, which I have been on occasion, I would bet the farm that this was going to be the 1979 film. In fact, I think I even said into a text message, we could probably skip 79. I already know what the answer is going to be there. But that being said, I think the one question I want to ask you is, the first time you saw this film, were you aware of the struggles that Coppola had gone through to make the movie, or was that something you learned in subsequent viewings or after the fact?
Oh no! I mean, it was national. It was worldwide. You know, the Time magazine had written a big thing about it. Newsweek had written a big thing about it. All the magazines and newspapers had covered. And what had happened was he showed an unfinished cut at the Cannes Film Festival. So it had already screened at Cannes and everyone flipped out. And so the word was already out that it was this masterpiece.
Okay.
Cannes. And yet the film didn't come out for another, I don't know, like 5-6 months. He went back and still reworked it even from there. So, yes, I was well aware not only of what he'd gone through, but that he'd already, you know, kind of recovered, that everyone was waiting for a Heaven's Gate-like disaster. And instead what they got was a masterpiece, and everyone had to kind of eat crow because they'd said Coppola's gone too far this time, much like they eventually were able to do when he made One from the Heart. They beat him down over that. But they were looking to beat him down over this, but it didn't work. And so, yeah, you knew what he had gone through. You knew that it was national news. So yeah, I did.
Okay.
But remember, everyone was expecting it to be a bomb, to be a disaster. So it was the opposite.
Okay. Excellent. It's the movie. Oh, going to circle back and ask you, if somebody's seeking out this film for the first time, which version of the film should they watch?
Oh my Lord. Okay. Even more so than the Spielberg various cuts, the extended cut, the director's cut, the original cut, the redone cut. See the first version. I've seen them all. I've seen them all in the theater. I've seen every version Coppola's released in the theater. Oh my God. I really appreciate the reason why people want to monetize this material that's sitting on the shelf. I get it. That's perfectly fine. But in terms of, if you want to see the masterpiece, if you want to see the correct, like, look, you don't spend 3 years and then go, oh, darn it, maybe I should have put that scene in where Robert Duvall's flying around asking to get his surfboard back. It's ridiculous. It shouldn't have been in the movie. He was right to cut it out of the movie. The whole French plantation sequence, yes, it's beautiful. And yes, it's got some good acting. And yes, it's cool. But it's not a part. It does not belong in the movie. He was right to cut it out. I know it killed him because he spent so much time and effort on it. But the French plantation sequence ruins the flow of the movie. Okay. He was right to leave it out. Even I was lucky enough to see him theatrically when the film ended and Kurt says the horror, you had the final dissolve through and PBR Street Gang, they're calling in to see if he wants to drop the bombs on Kurtz's compound, if Willard wants to do it. Because remember, he's like, he wrote down, kill them all. Kurtz told him to. Mm-hmm. Drop the bomb, kill them all. And he's floating away on the river. And Kurt says the horror, and you end on the kind of the Craven Idol, and then you fade out to black, no credits, nothing, black, and then it wrote black, and then the movie just came up, and then as you walked out, they actually handed out the credits in a printed pamphlet.
Oh, wow!
And that is the version I wish everyone could see, because even the blowing up of the compound that you see in various versions that they did in kind of a weird. Like solar kind of version, a solarized version of the footage, because he did blow up the whole compound. He just didn't know if he should or shouldn't. He hadn't decided. The filmmaker Coppola, not Willard. And I always thought it was good that he didn't blow it up. I thought it was good, but again, it's kind of like, I have to put credits on. I'll put something on. We blew it up. But I think that changes the story. Blowing it up is a different ending than not blowing it up. Leaving all the villagers alive. I mean, Kurtz is already dead. So that to me is how, in my mind, it's always ended. He doesn't blow up the compound. I think there have been various versions where they didn't have the kind of weird solarized footage of blowing up the compound, and versions where they did and where they didn't. I don't know what versions are floating out around there with the credits at this point. There's so many. But gang, if you can get, there's Blu-rays that have the original theatrical cut, the extended, the deluxe, the redux, all that crap. Just watch the original. Okay. The original. It's the shortest and it's the best.
Okay. All right. And I'm telling everybody, I take Phil's advice extremely serious, so I would follow that. So that
I put some thought into it. And also it'll turn you off to the movie if you watch the other ones, because there's stuff in it that's wrong. There's this whole sequence with the Playboy bunnies that's in another version that's wrong. That's just not like, what? There's a reason he and his editors decided they had to go. These scenes had to go, and they were right.
Interesting. So that is going to bring us, we're going to close out the decade, the 1970s, and we're going to come into the 1980s. So we've got 80, 81, 82, 83, 84. So we got a whole new decade. 1979, Apocalypse Now, your favorite movie. You are going into the 80s. Tell me what's going on in your mind. Here we go, 1980s.
Well, I thought we peaked. That was it.
Yep.
That was it. Apocalypse, we peaked. That's it. It's all downhill from here. And then along came my number one pick for 1980, Raging Bull. Okay. So, yes, Scorsese sits at number one in 2 slots here. Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. Just couldn't believe it. Also one of the great black and white films outside of the black and white era. And, I don't really even know what to add to Raging Bull other than you just got De Niro in his prime. You introduce Joe Pesci, who becomes an icon. It's the fight scenes, everything about it. It's like the gold standard of filmmaking. And it was Scorsese at his best.
The decision to shoot that film in black and white. I mean, you had mentioned, I think Manhattan's in black and white. Yeah. So, it's been done. Any trepidation, any thoughts going into it? Like, I can't believe Scorsese's shooting this in black and white. Obviously there are some color scenes in it when they show the home video, the 16 mil footage. But I'll give you my follow-ups on going into it the first time, realizing the film was in black and white. Your thoughts going into it, knowing it was in black and white.
Couldn't wait.
Okay.
Black and white's my favorite format. Black and white, to me, would I have liked if Apocalypse Now were in black and white? No, because color is such a huge part of that film. I thought it was totally appropriate. First of all, it's a period piece. And I think period pieces in color are really hard.
Yeah.
Because, you see the photographs from the 30s and the 40s. They're not in color in general. The movies from that era are not in color. So your visual point of reference is black and white. So all, just the streets, the colors on a street now versus the colors. Coppola had to work so hard to get The Godfather to look correct in terms of the color palette. He and Dean Tavares and Gordon Willis, right? They really had to desaturate it and keep it muted and it's almost like a brown and white movie, The Godfather. They really kept color for the most part out of that film. And again, because it's really, really hard. Modernity feels like it should be in color. Period pieces our reference points are black and white. So I thought it was a perfect decision. And then, like he said, the boxing, they did some tests. The gloves are red. The gloves are bright red. And he just said it just didn't. You've never seen, a fight, Rocky Graziano. You've never seen those fights. Joe Louis, you've never seen him in color. You never saw the red gloves. It's always black and white. And so he was like, I can't do the fight scenes in color. It'll look completely bizarre. And even if you see behind the scenes stills from the movie in color, they're weird. Like, whoa, that does not look right. But black and white, I think, was stylistically the absolutely perfect call, and I couldn't wait.
I remember going into this, and again, I saw this way too young as far as not being able to reach. I was like, oh, this is black and white. And then 20 minutes into it, I'm like, not even realizing it was in black and white anymore, just in the story, in the movie. Raging Bull is an incredible film. Okay, another true story. All right, so I'm just looking at the ones that are based on or inspired by real events. Your other honorable mentions for 1980?
The Shining.
Okay, absolutely.
Believe it or not, Dressed to Kill.
Dressed to Kill.
So I love De Palma. And last but not least, Caddyshack.
Caddyshack. All right, real quick, The Shining. What needs to be said other than, did you watch the sequel?
About 15 minutes.
15 minutes. That's all you gave to it. Okay, interesting. All right, we won't even try to unpack that. So, Dressed to Kill. All right, here we go. It's the De Palma film I haven't seen yet. So if I'm going to watch Shampoo, well, I guess we've taken Shampoo off tonight's viewing. We've got, now it's down to Annie Hall and Dressed to Kill.
Annie Hall.
Okay, all right, Annie Hall. Okay. Caddyshack.
Dressed to Kill is like a guilty pleasure.
Okay.
Dressed to Kill is just pure De Palma. I think it's his most, it's the film that best defines Brian De Palma as a filmmaker, and it's fun. Okay. And it influenced me a lot as a filmmaker, watching his stylistic choices, the way he used the camera, the way he made the film was very influential for me.
So I'm going to go into, I will watch Dressed to Kill at some point this week, but I'm going to go in completely blind. I don't even know what the film is about. I won't watch a trailer or even read a plot synopsis.
Turn it on.
All right, perfect.
And you'll be surprised because it's very over the top, just so you know. It's really over the top.
Okay, all right.
Very theatrical and big.
Comparing it to Blowout, which he'll do his next film. So, I mean, I've seen Blowout a couple of times. But I'm just curious.
Love Blowout.
Just curious how the two stack up against each other.
Love Blowout. I think they're equally good.
Okay.
I think I just put Dressed to Kill because it was the first one. It was the one that and it was a huge hit. It was a much bigger hit than Blowout because it has a much more happy ending. Whereas, as we know, Blowout has a very sad, tragic ending, which I think really is great. Travolta mumbling "Great Scream" is as kind of tragic and ironic as it gets, and it's a fantastic ending, but it was a downer. But I would say that they are equal, and Blowout's my second favorite De Palma film.
I know that Spielberg was obviously clearly very influential to your career decisions and wanting to become a filmmaker. De Palma falls in that category. Coppola obviously falls into that category. Is there any other directors at that time, in that time period?
Well, yeah, as you can see from this list, Scorsese.
Scorsese, of course. Scorsese.
Right. That was really, I would say it was Spielberg, Coppola, Scorsese, De Palma, and Woody Allen of all.
All right. So we're on to 1981. Oh, and by the way, I'm sorry. This is going to happen. 1980. All right. There's a big movie that comes out that year, a very successful film, sequel to Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back. I'm just curious your thoughts on the film. Did you see it opening day?
I sure did.
Okay.
And loved it. And, I don't know why I don't have it on here. I guess my favorite movie that George Lucas made is American Graffiti.
Okay.
So, which I think is a classic. It was before this list started, and it's just absolutely timeless and perfect. I find, as much as I've seen every single Star Wars made, all 9 of them. I have my kids' room have the Ralph McQuarrie original illustrations framed, 6 of them that I purchased long ago. Not the originals, but there are these glissé prints that he released back then that I tracked down. So don't get me wrong. I mean, I had a Star Wars poster in my bedroom when I was a kid. I loved it. But the filmmaking is just too straight ahead for me.
Okay.
It's just very straight ahead. And as you can see from all of these, like Raging Bull, The Shining, Dressed to Kill, Apocalypse, Alien, Manhattan, all that jazz, Being There, Close Encounters, Deer Hunter, Network, Texas, like they're all filmmakers' films. And I think George was making, this trilogy, and it became more of a product. And I'm not saying that in a denigrating way. I'm just saying the toys, the merch, the smartest thing I ever did was I held on to the merchandising. Ha ha ha. Fox should not have given me the merchandising, those dumb guys. And I owned the rights to the sequels. Ha ha. And I didn't like that. And I back then, because this was not popular back then like it is now, I didn't like that it was a cliffhanger. I'm like, what? So really, it's just I got to sit here for part 2? And now I need part 3 to really finish this story. That bugged me. It bugged me at the time. I remember being there as they're pulling away and they're standing there in the thing and he's got his hand. I'm like, what the hell? No. Whereas I thought the first Star Wars was a story unto itself. Had there never been a sequel other than Darth Vader living, right? When Darth Vader spun away alive, I was like, uh-oh, Vader's still out there. But I didn't think I had to see number 2 to finish number 1.
Right.
Whereas, sorry, you got to see number 3 to finish number 2. Oh, and that back then felt like a ripoff.
And
I also, go ahead.
You had to wait 3 years, which you would never wait 3 years now for something like that. You would wait less than a year.
No, and so and to me, I felt it bothered me. Also, I never bought, and I know this is blasphemy and just run a podcast, so no one's but I never bought that he originally was going to have Luke and Leia be brother and sister. That first movie, they were not brother and sister. No. I don't care what anyone says.
They weren't in the second one. She kisses him.
To kiss. There's romantic tension between him and Harrison Ford. It's fine to add things on as you go along and make up a story, but the notion that it was all laid out. I'm sorry, but Luke Skywalker started out a girl. Luke Skywalker was a female character originally. Don't tell me about how. I'm sorry. And I also didn't dig that they made them brother and sister. I was like, well, here I was rooting for them to get together. Like, I thought they were who's going to win, right? Han Solo or Luke for the love of Leia. And she's his sister. I was like, what? No, that's weird. Now I feel like I was rooting for incest. What the hell's going on here? So those things, and just the super straight ahead, as good a job as Irvin Kershner did, as well shot as it was, and as the effects were just, Dennis Muren and the stop motion and Phil Tippett. And come on. It's freaking awesome. But doesn't make it on the top of my list.
No problem. All right. So I just wanted to address that one. So getting into 1981.
So this year for me was not as strong as some of the other years. I found that 81, this is where I start to feel like the quality of films that I fell in love with starts to fade away from the list. And you'll see now it really starts shifting. So for me, I'm going to start with number 1. My number 1 movie of that year, Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Absolutely.
And at this point, I was in film school. They screened it early at USC. And, so I knew nothing. I knew nothing about it. I knew he was making it, but I didn't know what the story was. That big ball comes rolling down. He's racing out of that thing. And I just hook, line, and sinker. And again, there's some effects in the movie, and but even the melting of the guy's face is stop motion. It's not CG. It's in camera. The big Nazi camp that he goes digging down is all real. The chamber is all real. Everything's physical. Everything he does, the truck chase is physical. Imagine how they do that now. They wouldn't drag that stuntman underneath the truck. Oh. So anyway, loved it. Loved the movie. And it was, it was a great pairing between Spielberg and Lucas, because you had Spielberg's style, but Lucas's economic filmmaking, kind of storytelling, the crisp, old school style of filmmaking that George liked, mixed with the stylistic flourishes of Spielberg. So yeah, loved Raiders. My number 2 would actually be Road Warrior.
Oh yeah,
George Miller onto the scene. Yes, he had already made Mad Max, but that didn't really penetrate here quite as much. Really not. I mean, it didn't really get on my radar. The original Road Warrior, the original Mad Max, I should say. So Road Warrior just blew my mind. And it was heavy influence on me also as a filmmaker. Anything action driven, I still go back to Road Warrior to study. And on the comedy side, the film that did it for me that year, Stripes, Bill Murray and Stripes. It's a classic. How could you not love Stripes? And those are my 3, with Raiders being number 1.
All right. So my quick commentary on these films, obviously Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yes. I mean, I just watched it like a week ago. I didn't know it was, I didn't even think we were going to discuss it, but I just watched it because it was like, I want to watch this movie again. I love it. I love it. There is a 5th Indiana Jones coming out.
I know.
It's not directed by Spielberg. James Mangold's going to be directing it, which, he did Copland in 97, which I think is an incredibly underrated film. I love that movie. What else was on your list here? The Road Warrior. I mean, that's just incredible. Just incredible. I am a big fan of George Miller. I like 2015's Mad Max Fury Road. When we did an episode recently where we're doing our greatest sequels episode, and there was a big debate between my co-host Jason said Mad Max Fury Road, and I said I think there's a case to be made that The Road Warrior is actually a better movie than Fury Road.
Oh God, I'm sorry, co-host. No. Yes, Fury Road has the scale because you can do that. People, they're out in the desert. Yeah, they're in Africa. And yeah, they've strapped all those guys up high. Go look at the making of on that thing. 90% of it's faked. It's just, and I know people must be like, God, you just have, everything's got to be real for it to matter for you. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, you're right. It does. Because I'm tired of animation. I'm tired of people doing stuff that I know they didn't really do. There's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't entertain me when I know it's fake. What's entertaining to me is when I'm like, holy crap, they did that and filmed it. And now I get to experience what they experienced, probably not even nearly as exciting, but I get to experience a piece of their experience. I get to go. That's the beauty of capturing something on film or video. Why does everyone pick up their camera and film every event of their life now? Because they supposedly, although I don't know how much of us really do go back and watch, but supposedly we all want to revisit that time, that moment, that emotion. But if it was fake, would you film it? No, you'd be like, it's fake. Why do I want to go back and look at something fake, staged, phony? You want to watch something that brings you back to the emotion of the moment. When I see something real, when I see that bridge on the River Kwai explode, and I see that steam train fly through the air and collapse, I'm like, holy crap. But not only do I say that because how big a deal it was, but because of the emotional impact of the moment based on the 3-hour story that's led up to that. Whereas now it's like, if we just make it big, it'll be cool because it's big. I didn't who I dug? I loved Max in The Road Warrior. His dog from the first scene, him and his dog and the guy screaming at him. And right? That opening chase. You love Max. Let's go to Fury Road. Max just grunts the whole movie. He just grunts. He looks put out. He doesn't like her. She doesn't like him. They're trapped. They're angry. No one's happy. I don't really like her very much either. And I love Charlize Theron. I mean, she's a fantastic actor. I love her movies. I love all watch her in anything. And I love the haircut. It's great. Stylistically fantastic. Who am I rooting for? The weirdo girls in the back, the thing. I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't really care. I just don't care. The execution is incredible, but people have become way too enamored of execution versus character and story. And that's my bone to pick with this stuff. It's huge. It's awesome. But I'm sorry, in terms of character, him and the little feral boy in Road Warrior, him and the guy in the helicopter, it has humor. I can't, right? It's funny. The snakes, it's fun. It's funny. The little feral kid crawling out on the front of the big rig to get that one shotgun shell, and it's rattling there on the front, and it's rattling, and the little kid's going forward, and he's driving, and you're like, get the shotgun shell. The guy's coming in from above. Like, that is filmmaking. All that giant, huge stuff. It's cool. Only George Miller can do it.
So you're going to give. So what you're saying is. So what you're saying is you're. So what you're saying is you're giving the nod to the Road Warrior when comparing.
Yeah, a little bit.
I love it.
And not just based on execution, which I also think is superior, but because of story and character.
All right. Now, when it comes to Stripes,
yes, Ivan Reitman, and Bill Murray in his prime, Ramis in his prime. It's just too good. And I mean, and Warren Oates, Sergeant Holka.
Sergeant Holka. Just you've got a Judge Reinhold. You've got a early appearance by John Candy. I mean, it's just
too good.
The casting's terrific.
It's like I was saying about this. It's one of those plant your flag movies. Like it's just boom, there they all were in their prime together. Before Ghostbusters, blew the whole thing out, before they all kind of became, it was like them still going, hey, what if we did a movie about going in the army? Like it still had that what if feeling to it, that what if we did this, it would be funny feeling, as opposed to let's make a franchise and go crazy financially.
When you watch Stripes, pound for pound, the amount of jokes or humor or funny moments are just nonstop. Just the scene alone when they're at the Army recruiting station. Every question he asks, the response you get from Murray and Ramis is just you're dying. It's hilarious.
It just when you and your friends made it with those cows, I want to party with you, cowboy. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Francis, it just goes on and on and on. So anyway, it's just, again, got to see it in the theater opening night. It was so cool. But what I really feel lucky to have gotten to experience in the pre-internet age is that nothing got ruined.
Yeah.
And the only way you could see a trailer was in the theater or maybe a commercial on TV, 30 seconds. If you want to see a trailer, you had to see the movies. So you saw the movie in the trailer 3 months before it came out. That's all you got. Unless it was Apocalypse Now and almost bankrupt everybody, unless it was big news. Like, no, Stripes was like, oh, Bill Murray's making a movie. What's it about? I don't know. It's called Stripes. You see the trailer. Oh, it's them in the army. Oh, okay. Looks funny. Then you win. And I think now you just have, unfortunately, a lot of that anticipation is different because there's so much more information prior to seeing a film.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that.
Same surprise.
Because Regal, I get these email notifications that on Mondays now, they're doing surprise screenings, meaning you buy a ticket for a movie and you have no idea what movie you're about to see, but it's a new and up and coming. It's a film that's going to be released soon, but it's like a sneak peek. And it's almost gotten me. But I forgot that there's really nothing coming out that I'm interested in seeing in the theater.
Well, that's the problem. Look at the up and coming films, and are you ready?
Unless you're telling me that the surprise screening is going to have to be in a 3D IMAX, which I have a feeling, it's going to be Avatar, then I would go for that. All right. So, okay, Phil. So we're on to 1982. So every movie you recommend now will be celebrating its 40th anniversary this year.
Wow, very good. Well, okay. So this was tough. This was tough. Because I already got two of his films here. It's tough. It was a tough one. I just started feeling like, but man, I'm going to give it a tie.
Okay. All right. Do you want to do honorable mentions first, or?
Yeah, my honorable mention is Blade Runner.
Okay.
And it again, the original cut, not the directors, not the different voiceover, not the original Blade Runner. Just think about it. No CG, all miniatures. I love effects work in miniature. I love effects. I love working on effects. I love doing effects. I actually love really well done CG. My problem is when CG becomes the story, as opposed to the story driving the CG. That's when I get frustrated. But
that being said, you liked Jurassic Park.
Oh yeah. Really liked Jurassic Park.
Yeah,
the first one.
Yeah.
Loved it. Blew my mind. Because it was, again, the CG was in service of a story, and a set of characters. Do I think it's Spielberg's best film? No. Do I think it's really great? Yeah. Did I really enjoy it? Of course. Again, saw that opening weekend. I went to the movies all the time. So my tie, of course, is between E.T., Big Shock, and Tootsie.
Oh, Tootsie. Interesting. Okay. All right. So
Tootsie is a seriously underrated, not talked about enough movie from a great director named Sidney Pollack, who did tons of really solid, well-acted, well-made films, and was a really interesting guy on top of it, and super powerful in Hollywood back, in the 70s and the 80s. Particularly in the 80s. When I first came in, Sidney was right up there in terms of the power structure with Spielberg. And they're both on the Universal lot, and Sidney Pollack was a power to be reckoned with. I almost worked with him. Well, I did work with him on a series called Fallen Angels that he produced. But anyway, so almost did a movie with him. But, you've got Dustin Hoffman, and Bill Murray again, Terry Garr. It's just, for those of you, I'm sure most of the audience has seen it, but because it plays on cable and TV and all that kind of stuff. But it's a great film. It's a great performance. It's so funny. It has one of the great comedic climactic endings. Ranks up there with Philadelphia Story and Bringing Up Baby and all those great screwball comedies that Howard Hawks used to do, and love the film. Just love everything about it. Oh, Jessica Lange, my son, forget her, how fantastic she is in it as well. And so, yeah, love Tootsie. E.T., what can I add? What can I add other than no one saw it coming? I mean, Spielberg essentially directed two movies that year, Poltergeist and E.T. It's kind of well known now that he took over Poltergeist. So he had a twofer in 82. And the one that no one saw and no one knew anything about was E.T. because they really kept it under wraps. And, I just showed it to my kids recently. They loved it. It holds up across the board. And so those are really my three, E.T., Tootsie, and Blade Runner. But E.T. and Tootsie as far as the classics go.
Okay. All right. So real quick commentary on my part. Blade Runner, it's exceptional. It's one of those movies that I watch and I still to this day say, how did they do that? I'm still watching that movie a lot and asking that question.
It's visionary. It's a visionary film.
Yeah. I've seen multiple cuts of the film, like you said. It's actually harder sometimes to find the theatrical versions unless you want to outright buy the movie, like you said, with the different versions on it.
Right.
Tootsie is a movie that my mom will not to this day stop talking about.
Great. Your mom and I have, your mom has good taste.
She does. And she just thinks that is one of the funniest movies of all time. And I think it's absolutely hilarious. I don't even know, like, for those who don't know what the movie's about, I don't even want to actually say. I just, just watch it. It's great.
Funny as hell. The other thing about it too is it's a high-end comedy, meaning the cinematography, the production design, the craft behind it. A lot of times, like for instance, no one's going to talk about the craft behind Caddyshack. Or for that matter, you're really not going to talk about the craft behind Stripes or Animal House. Comedies tend to be kind of seat of their pants, just lit, just shot, because the comedy is the deal, right? The story, the characters, the comedy. It's not really how it's made. And in fact, there's a whole theory behind making, Ivan Reitman told me about this early in my career, that if you make it too slick, if you make it too well produced, it's not funny. If the cinematography is too pretty, if the design is too nice, if it's all too put together, it doesn't feel quirky. It doesn't feel real. It still has to have like a bit of funky grit going on. And I think that's really true. But you watch the film, it's shot by a guy named Owen Reutzmann, who's again, another huge name in cinematography. You can look up his credits, but he's huge. He's fantastic. It's an amazing DP. So it's beautifully lit and shot. Like it's got an eye. There's Sidney Pollack had, really had a lot going on. So it's one of those really rare examples of a high-end execution that matches the comedy. And I've always been hard-pressed to really find another one like it. You really generally, even if you go like 40-Year-Old Virgin, it's hysterical, right? But it's made just, it's kind of shot like a comedy. It's just, you know what I mean by that? Yeah. And I love Judd Apatow. I think he's freaking brilliant. But you don't Superbad, like all those things are just kind of shot rough and ready. They're not shot with a real design eye, whereas Tootsie is. And that's another thing I really admired about it, because I'd never really seen it done that way. Except it was done that way back in the 40s. So if you were at Philadelphia Story, but again, black and white is very different. Like, it was just the comedies then were different. They were more stylized. So here was a comedy set in the real world of New York City, on the streets, all locations. None of it feels like it's on a fake stage. It all feels real. And, it's really a unique piece of comedy. I think it's a classic. I really do. You'll never, if you like it at all, you'll never grow tired of it.
Absolutely. Now, E.T. is my first movie theater memory. All right.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So I believe I have to believe that this was a time when movies would be re-released into theaters. So it would have its first run, and then a movie would be back for a limited engagement, maybe even a year later, because this is still 82, 83. So, So I don't think I saw it. I want to say I was 5. So this would have been 83, but I remember my dad taking my brother and I to see the movie, and just scared to death in the beginning scenes of those movies. Just absolutely terrified. I showed this, we're not together anymore, but a year and a half ago when my girlfriend and I were together, has a now 10-year-old daughter. She was 9 at the time. And one of the things that I loved to do was to introduce her to the movies that I loved. And so there was a real theme there, because we watched Jaws, Jurassic Park, and E.T. in one weekend.
To a 9-year-old?
I got permission.
Jaws I haven't shown my own children Jaws. They're 9, 11, and 13.
Okay, but I want to say for the fact, so
maniac. Go on. No wonder you're not together anymore.
So the mom, my girlfriend at the time, I planted the seed of the idea of Jaws to the 9-year-old, and she just couldn't wait to see it. And
did she like it?
She thought, no, well, she liked it, but she thought it was, she's used to modern movies.
So what did she think, though? She thought it was fake?
She said, well, she laughed every time the shark was on screen.
Right.
And she goes, that wasn't scary. I thought this was going to be scary. And Mom thought that her daughter would never want to get in the ocean again.
Yeah.
Had none of that effect. None of that effect.
That's so interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, and you know what? Honestly, Dana, you can't. This is why Jaws and Cuckoo's Nest were so close for me. Is because I will not argue with someone that says Jaws feels dated. I won't.
Yeah.
Because what you would expect now is to see a photorealistic shark.
Yeah.
And what you saw then was a mechanical shark. And because you had never seen a shark, period, in a movie, then some documentary on Mutual of Omaha Wild Kingdom on Sunday night.
Yeah.
Seriously, you went with it. Believe you me, the world went with it, right? You and I know that as a historical fact. But if I showed my kids today, they'd be like, that shark's so fake. Yeah. I wouldn't argue with them. And if it blew the movie for them, in fact, I'm reluctant to show them Jaws because I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear their goddamn punk ass criticisms.
You should have heard debating with her. I'm like, but weren't the performances just incredible though? The tension, okay. So that was number one. Number two was Jurassic Park that we watched. Okay. She really liked that movie. Yeah. She was on the edge of her seat. The third and final film we watched that weekend was E.T. And at the end of that movie, I felt awful because she was crying her eyes out.
There you go. You know what's so funny about that is really, does E.T. look all that much more real than the shark?
No.
Really, you kind of can tell he's an animatronic, but it doesn't matter. It's his character. Yeah. This is what people, look, it's really hard to write and execute great character. It is. Look, Tootsie, great central character. Raiders, great central character. Raging Bull, great central character. Close Encounters, Taxi Driver, all great characters. All. It just goes on. Network, on and on and on. It's really hard to write and execute great characters. And E.T.'s a great character. And it's sort of the kids, but it's E.T. that's the great character. Whereas the sharks are supposed to scare you. Now, by the way, if you'd have taken her into a big giant movie theater with a big giant screen with it all dark around her and that music, she might have been more into Jaws than you do at TV at home. I don't think Jaws is ever going to be as effective on your home screen as it would be in a dark theater with people screaming batshit crazy around you. Like, that's just not going to be the same. Whereas E.T. can work, right? Because E.T. is about the face. E.T.'s in here. E.T.'s about phone home, be good. It's about all that crap. So it's really, so it's so funny. I showed my kids Jurassic. They liked it. E.T., they loved it. Same kind of thing. And again, though, I would suggest that the characters in E.T. are stronger than the characters in Jurassic.
Yeah.
Jurassic's a spectacle. And that T-Rex chasing them down the street, down the muddy road, is just as exciting now as it was then. It looks fantastic. It does not look cheesy. It's so well done. I love the mechanical giant ones that they use. They don't even need to use anymore, but back then they did. They've come so far with that, as you can see from these dragons on House of Dragons these days, these giant close-ups. You're like, wow, the CG, it's incredible. It's incredible. It's mind-blowing. But yes, we had a similar experience. I would not show them Jaws because I will not hear their criticisms of the shark. Moving on. Because, I will kick them out of my house. I mean, they're young. They can survive. Jesus.
I will just wrap that up by saying that the version of E.T. that I showed her was the original theatrical and not the one that was re-released in the theaters with the guns. Shotguns removed for walkie-talkies in their place. So she did see the original. So the scene with E.T. in the bathtub was omitted from that one as well.
I so wish I'd still worked at Amblin when he did that. I'd have stormed up there and been like, "Are you out of your mind? Make them do that? You let them tell?" No.
I was shocked when that happened.
Oh, knocked him into that.
What were we? I know the time period when that movie was re-released, and I know that. But
they don't shoot them.
No, they don't even aim them at him.
Oh, Jesus. Whatever. Moving on.
All right. We are on to 1983. big year for 3D movies, 82 and 83.
Interesting.
Did you get into the 3D boom? Did you see?
Never.
You didn't see?
Never did.
Okay.
I almost made one. I was offered a 3D movie back in the aughts. Didn't end up happening. It was actually a 3D thriller. Yeah. Let's see here, 83. So again, these years as they go on, become kind of harder and harder for me. I have to say, there aren't as many kind of slam dunks. I'm kind of found myself searching, for my favorites as the 80s proceeded. And no, it will not be Return of the Jedi. I can promise you that. And which I think is the weakest film of all the Star Wars movies, because once you have those Ewoks, you will never recover in my book. So, all right, I'm going to give you the runners up. Okay. A fantastic film. Don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, I highly suggest it. Tender Mercies, starring Robert Duvall.
Okay, I have not. Writing that down. Okay.
He actually won Best Actor for it. It is just a very quiet, it really had a big impact on me because it was so low key and so simple. Directed by Bruce Beresford, written by Horton Foote, who wrote the screenplay for To Kill a Mockingbird.
Okay. Great
playwright. And he's just unbelievably great in it. And it's not one of his big bombastic performances. It's very subtle. It's very moving. It's a very moving story about a guy trying to get his life together. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay.
Number 2, which is on the opposite end of the spectrum, Scarface.
Yes, absolutely.
Not in the theater. I did not know. I gotta tell you that his accent at first, I was like, what is Pacino doing? But you get into it and you get deeper and deeper. And by the time he's got his say hello to my little friend moment, I was all in. And again, it's De Palma. And boy, it's really interesting to me how one would have thought that film could have faded over the years as being, kind of a film of its time, of its era. And now, it's too much this, it's too much that, it's too bombastic, the accent, the thing, the misogyny, the whole deal. Instead, it's like as big as ever.
Yeah, it's bigger now than it was when it came out.
It was. It is. I mean, yes, it is than it was. It's crazy. I would never, because it took kind of a beating back then. Like, it was very mixed. The reaction to it was very mixed. Poor De Palma. And here's the guy, Untouchables. I mean, here's a guy who made so many successful movies that are still in the mix, but, he just doesn't get talked about in the same way as he should. He's a great director. De Palma, because he was so clear about what he wanted. And no one else, really before or since, was making films in his style. There's no one like him. No one. And that is hard to do as a director, to be a one of a kind. Like, there's no one like Scorsese. There's no one like Spielberg. There's no one like De Palma. It's really hard to do. It's shit. I couldn't do it. It's really hard to do.
When talking about Scarface for a moment, because I host these weekly dinner to movie events at a restaurant here in downtown, in the downtown area where I live, where we have a little screening room. I give an introduction to the film, and I'm always, people eat dinner while the movie is playing. And it's a fun little concept, something we came up with in 2020. But I'm always weary of showing movies that are long.
Right.
So I've learned that a 90-minute movie is too short to try to do all the courses of the meal, but 2 hours is kind of the sweet spot. But this is what I've noticed about, Scarface in particular, is for a movie that's 2 hours and 50 minutes long. That is a long movie. The pace of that film really, really never lets up. Like, there's not a wasted scene in that movie. And even if something feels like it's dragging for a moment, all of a sudden the switch is flipped and it turns into just an incredible. I love that film. I absolutely love that film. And I revisit it at least once a year. And there are certain scenes in that movie that I'm blown away with. The entire scene where, Pacino has been shot at the Babylon Club, and he knows it's Lopez that set him up. And, you get back to the Frank Lopez Motors, and Tony is told to call at 3:00 and say, we didn't get him. All right. And there's that scene. And every time that Frank Lopez picks up the phone at 3:00, and you just want him to go, no, just say, okay, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Who is this? If you would have just said, who is this? You'd still be alive. And it's just, and I've seen that scene 20 times, and there's a part of me that thinks he's going to say, well, who the hell is this? What are you talking about? Instead, you go, oh no, it's okay. I'll be home soon. I was like, like just little scenes like that. And the scene where Tony says he's not going to kill kids, the whole scene where they've planted the bomb under there. And it's the first hint of humanity that you see in him the entire movie. And I think that is such an interesting turning point for his character.
Well, I still wish he'd blown the guy up.
Well, yeah, he'd still be around. He'd still be the king of Miami to this day. It's an
needed to press that button.
Amazing film. Absolutely amazing film. I can't imagine what it must have been like to experience that in '83 in the theater. That must have just been mind blowing.
I think I saw it at the Dome. And I always would go to the Dome, Cinerama Dome here. If it was playing, that's where I'd always go because it's the best theater in LA. Now I'm starting to get depressed because there were movies you'd be very, very excited about, and you'd go and these filmmakers would deliver. They deliver. And you'd be going, and I felt the same way about Untouchables years later. It's like, oh my God, this should be great. Sean Connery, Kevin Costner, Robert De Niro. And it was. Spielberg. Oh, here's Poltergeist. It delivered. Spielberg, here's E.T. It delivered. Spielberg, here's Raiders. It delivered. Coppola, Godfather 1, Godfather 2, The Conversation, Apocalypse Now. You're just like, what the hell? And needless to say, Scorsese, film after film after film. I don't know. Now I just think it's such a shame, like Scorsese's, and I'm sorry, is relegated to streaming, and that bugs the crap out of me. Like it just does. I'm happy that Apple's financing his new movie. I'm happy that he's getting everything that he wants and needs. But the idea that I just don't think there are future filmmakers sitting around going, can't wait to press play on my Apple TV to watch Scorsese's next movie in the same way I could not wait to get my ass in to see Scarface.
Yeah. And I had that relationship.
It bums me out because the medium, when it's great, sorry to interrupt, but it's going to say when the medium, when it's done by guys like that, is, well, excuse the pun, untouchable. And no, streaming is not the same. These shows, these series that go on for 5 years and 10 episodes a pop, that is not the same as telling a story in 2 to 3 hours in one go, in one sitting, and make it work to where you and I are talking about them 40 years later.
Yeah. So,
and I'm still as passionate about it now as I was then. In fact, maybe more so because I didn't realize back then how special it really, really was, that it would go away. I didn't know it was going to go away.
So I came up with my cinematic adventures in the 1990s, which was arguably a good decade for cinema. It really was. So, that's when I'm, a teenager and into my 20s is the 90s. And for me, it was filmmakers like, Spielberg was still Spielberg, for me in the 90s. Tarantino, obviously for me was he is the last filmmaker that I will run to the theater.
Sure.
Because, that you tell me a Tarantino film's coming out, I'm going to go see it. I can't wait. I'm going to see it opening day.
Again, there's a reason for that. He's one of a kind. Spielberg's one of a kind. Jim Cameron is one of a kind.
Yeah.
This is why you're excited for Avatar. It's not because you got sucked into the Avatar hype. It's because of the filmmaker is one of a kind. And if someone else was directing, Joe Blow was directing the Avatar sequel, you'd see it, but you wouldn't have the same excitement. It's because Jim is not going to screw around.
Yeah.
And Quentin isn't going to screw around. And Steven isn't going to screw around. And Scorsese isn't going to screw around. But the problem is that what I think the streaming has done for him is it's elongated his storytelling. And I think he's a better storyteller when he's a bit crisper.
Yeah.
I like The Irishman. I really enjoyed it. But do I think that had it had to be theatrical only and it had been maybe a half an hour shorter, if whatever he had to do to crisp it up, I think it would have been better. But I don't know that for sure. I'd have to see that version. But I'm still saying the discipline of cinema is not the same as pressing a button on Apple TV.
And I don't get this, okay? 2013, Christmas Day, okay? Christmas Day. I'm saying hello to my family. Hi, I think this is great. This is good. I have to go. The Wolf of Wall Street opens today. I have to see that in the theater. I have to see it day one. Mm-hmm. Why? Sure. I mean, it frustrates me because Scorsese is one of those directors where day one, I will see whatever he's doing in the theater.
Right.
The Departed in the theater, Casino. I mean, just you name it. When it was of my generation, I saw those films. The Irishman had a limited theatrical engagement. I know why, to qualify for the Academy Awards. I get that. But the idea that Scorsese's new films are going to be on Apple, I mean, are they going to release them in theaters? I mean, what's the point?
According to Google, the budget for The Irishman was $225 million. The low end is $159. The high end is $250. The agreed upon public budget is $225. I did hear it was over $200. The scuttlebutt around because of the amount of CG and how long it took. So there you have your answer. No Warner's, Sony, Paramount, Universal, Disney. That's it. There's no Fox anymore. There's no New Line anymore. That's it. I just named them. They're not spending $225 on The Irishman.
No.
Theatrical. So there's your answer. Would they spend $18 on The Irish theatrical? Yes. Maybe even $40. Maybe. But at 3.5 hours, maybe not.
He could have.
I'm just telling you can't. It's cost. It's cost driven.
I feel like Scorsese could have made a version of The Irishman for under $50 million. That would have been just as good.
I don't. I really.
Everybody would have worked for scale to work with him. I mean, I think it's possible.
That's the problem. Is they're not, and they're not gonna, and none of them are gonna at that point in their lives. So.
Well,
with younger actors, with different actors, but not everyone's. I think in that game, I'm just guessing. My guess is at this point they're like, we're going to get paid. We've earned it. We're at the age where we deserve it, and we want it. And what do we care if it's 3,000 theaters or 500 million iPhone owners?
All right. You know what? We could go down this. We could go down this road for a while. We've had these discussions for years now, but it's
pertinent in this conversation because now we're going over these films that just won't and will never exist again as theatrical releases. Right. That's the point we're making. So what we're making is for your audience is to say this. It's really simple: is that not very many movies on this list could or would be made now as theatrical releases. They couldn't be made most likely because I don't think the talent is out there to make them, or the vision of enough filmmakers are out there to make what we're talking about. And number two, financially, it's extremely prohibitive. You can't make Taxi Driver for $1.2 million anymore, period. And and then lastly, the theatrical drama, of which these are many on my list, are just no longer lucrative.
Yeah. So
there you have it. All right. What's our next year?
We're on to the last year. We're on to 1984.
Okay.
This is it. This is, we got this is fourth quarter, 2-minute warning.
Well, 84 was it was interesting. I guess I'll start with the movies, my runners up.
Okay.
I think that's how I'll start this year. But my number one will probably surprise you. I think we're going to end on a surprise.
Okay. I'm ready.
All right. So my runners up, a guilty pleasure, but I loved it and it announced, a really terrific filmmaker, and that is Romancing the Stone.
Yes. Bob Zemeckis.
Love Romancing the Stone. Bob Zemeckis, director. It's kind of like my Tootsie pick. You can watch it again and again. It's funny as hell. Its tone is absolutely perfect. Again, a very tough needle to thread in terms of the comedy, adventure, tongue-in-cheek aspect of it. Turner and Douglas are just Michael Douglas in his prime, Kathleen Turner in her prime, and it's just fun as hell. And I really loved it and wished I always wanted to make a comedic action adventure. Almost made one with Chris Tucker called Wichita, which was very close to Romancing the Stone in mood and tone. It was set to happen, and then they stole him away to do Rush Hour 3, and broke my heart. All right, my next one up.
Okay.
This is Spinal Tap.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, everybody. It's a classic. It's unbeatable.
Rob Reiner. I'm telling you, just want to briefly say this is listen to this run. Okay.
Ready.
This is Spinal Tap 84. Stand By Me 86. Princess Bride 87. When Harry Met Sally 89. Misery 90. And A Few Good Men in 92. What kind of run is that? And it kicks off with This is Spinal Tap. It's unbelievable.
It's insane. It's insane. It's like that. I never realized those were all in a row. I knew the list. I didn't realize there was nothing in between. Well, and what's weird is, and I say this with tremendous respect. I mean, for that run is, what's there even to comment? It's incredible. Then after 92, why doesn't it? I don't get how someone who's doing it consistently, boom, 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 boom. It wasn't like he lost his producer. It wasn't like, oh, they were all with De Niro and then he's not with De Niro anymore. It was like, what changed? I don't get it.
Every movie is completely different from the previous one. That's another thing.
It goes after, hang on.
I can tell you. North.
You got it right there?
North with Bruce Willis and Elijah Wood.
Okay, keep going.
And, well, no, that's as far as my Rob Reiner filmography goes, because after North, there's really nothing after that. I mean, he's got his production company, Morgan Creek. He's still actively involved in writing and producing, and he's directed some movies throughout the years, but nothing ever captures that magic again. Yeah,
I'm just trying to see real quick. Sorry if this pause takes you.
Fine.
He's doing Spinal Tap too. It's in pre-production.
Well, I'm all on board with that. Because, okay, now why am I on board with that? Because Christopher Guest is one of my all-time favorite.
Yeah, he's great.
I mean, Waiting for Guffman, which is a movie that not enough people have seen, is.
Well, you actually left out. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. No, please.
You actually left out Princess Bride.
I did know. I said Princess Bride. 87. Princess Bride. Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The Spinal Tap is the sure thing.
The sure thing.
Stand By Me, Princess Bride, Harry Met Sally, Misery, Few Good Men. Okay, then you get North. Then you get American President.
That's a good one.
Goes to Mississippi. Then you get The Story of Us. Alex and Emma. Rumor Has It. The Bucket List. And So It Goes. Yeah, Shock and Awe, Being Charlie. I don't know those films.
But to circle back what I say about Christopher Guest, I mean, this is Spinal Tap. And then the movies he starts directing, Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, A Mighty Wind, For Your Consideration.
So funny.
They're all fantastic. For Your Consideration is probably his most underrated film. I think that wasn't really critically praised, but I think it's genius. I mean, as someone who loves the industry, that is an inside look at the industry. It's brilliant.
Really funny. My AD worked with him on a couple of those, and he loved working with them. He liked them a lot.
And those movies are all like a lot of the lines in those films are improvised, right? Like that's kind of like his thing, right? Like it's amazing. So
all right, so then it wouldn't be 84 if I didn't throw in Ghostbusters.
Of course.
Gotta throw in Ghostbusters. That's probably more a nostalgic choice for me than a filmmaking choice. But it's a seminal film. You might say, well, if you're going to throw in Ghostbusters, you got to throw in Empire Strikes Back. And I think that would be a fair argument.
Yeah.
But I think Ghostbusters was original. It was a one-off. It took the world by storm. Ivan Reitman was the first director I ever met that summer of 84. It's when he was the first person to ever offer me a movie. And so anyway, Ghostbusters, but here's my number one film.
Oh, wait, before you do that, can I just say one thing about Ghostbusters before you do that? What I love about Ghostbusters, and I came to this realization the last time I watched it, is Ghostbusters is not a movie about ghosts. It's a movie about three guys going into business for themselves.
Yeah, that's true.
And it just happens to be ghost busting. It's just, I mean, it's characters. That's what sells that movie. Yes, the special effects, that was all great and that was all fun, but you love the characters, all three of them. All right, Aykroyd, Ramis, Murray, even Winston. I love Winston, but he's not introduced till the second half of the movie. But you love the characters, and Rick Moranis is just a genius.
Yeah, totally agree. Holds up too. Still funny. All right, number one. With a drum roll. Paris, Texas.
Paris, Texas. Is Paris, Texas, is that Bogdanovich? No?
Wim Wenders.
Okay.
Wim Wenders is the director. It stars Harry Dean Stanton and Natasha Kinski and Dean Stockwell. And it is, I think, a great film. And it is, let me see, of the top 27. I mean, yeah, it's here on IMDb, it's higher rated than Ghostbusters, Karate Kid, Gremlins, and Terminator. I mean, it's like the highest rated in the top 25 of that year. So, yeah, it's a very unusual story. It's very slow. Written by Sam Shepard.
Okay. Yeah. Accomplished actor and playwright.
Yes. And it was a very influential movie for me, kind of visually and stylistically. And I love Harry Dean Stanton, always have. And it's really heartfelt and emotional. And I really can't even really get into the story other than a guy looking for a lost love.
Okay, because I was going to say, please don't say anything about.
That's all it is.
Okay, so
that's all you need to know. A guy looking for his lost love.
Listen, I like the slow burn movies. I'm one of these guys.
Slow burn.
I'm one of these guys who, I think music was better when it was 6 minutes a song because it gave.
Well, and speaking of music, this one's Ry Cooder does the score.
Okay.
Score is fantastic.
All right. Again, I've got time to watch a movie before the Patriots play tonight. Annie Hall or Paris, Texas?
No, because Annie Hall, just because it's more fun.
Okay.
So, yeah, because if you got to go to something, you got something else to do after. Paris, Texas is like one of those things. Sit down at night. You've got the time. There's no rush. You're going to be in for the long haul. You got to make it to the end. You'll wonder where it's going. It's not a pre-football game.
Okay, 10-4. 10-4. I love it. That's awesome. Phil, this is going to go on record as the longest recording that you and I have done.
Yes.
We took 10 minutes break, but by my math here, we're looking at about 2 hours and 45 minutes now.
Well, it's a lot of movies.
It's a lot of movies
to go through. Oh my God. I mean, I could probably spend an hour on each one of these films, but it was really fun to go back through the list. And I was kind of surprised by what I discovered on a year by year basis. They all kind of blend together what year you saw them, the general area, but to see specifically what was out each year was really interesting and really made me think a lot, as you can tell, about how much things have changed and what they meant to me personally and what they meant to me professionally, emotionally. Like, it was just in my development as a human being, let alone a filmmaker, and how powerful a movie could be in a kid's life.
Oh yeah. No, I get that. I had similar experience via a different time period, but I'm still envious of the experience that you got to have. And the thing is, I can only speak for myself that I took it for granted when I was going through the 90s. I took it for granted that these powerful original stories that I was seeing, because yes, the 90s still had that was going to last forever. And I didn't have the foresight to recognize where things were heading. And
me neither.
And it's
me neither.
So
me neither, my friend.
Now when I see something special in the theater, or I see something special, I can recognize when I'm seeing something special, and I don't take that for granted anymore. So what an awesome time talking to you. What an incredible list of films there. I knew there was going to be a few that I hadn't seen, and one that I actually hadn't heard of, and that was your final film, Paris, Texas. So
it's obscure. It was an art house movie. It was never wide release.
Well,
it's not talked about much.
Well, I'm on the line with you here. Let me go to my little app, because we live in a world where you can just type in the name of a movie and it will tell you exactly where you can find it. See how readily available this is, or if this is going to have to be a buy on Amazon. Paris, Texas.
Yep.
Oh. It's on HBO Max right now. There you go. All right, enough said. All right, I don't want to read the plot synopsis. So Phil, thank you so much for being on the show. Thanks for being on the 9th anniversary of this podcast. I'm expecting you to be on the 10th anniversary a year from now, but I'd love to have you on way before then.
You can count me in on both. And, I love doing this with you. It's always a blast. Really, it means a lot to me too, it really does, that you asked me to be a part of this. 9 years. It's incredible. Congratulations, Dana. You deserve it. I'll be here for you anytime you need.
I appreciate that, Phil. Thank you so much, my friend. We will talk soon. Okay.
All right.
See
Thanks,
you.
Dana.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Phil.